Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of Monday, October 21st. If you could please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone again. I'd like to share with you that in accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on an issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for a future agenda. And Teresa, can you please call the first item of business?
Yes, a couple of announcements. Due to the Veterans Day holiday, the City Council will not meet on Monday, November 11th. We ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet lying on the podium. Testifiers may use either microphone, and there is a sign-in sheet by each microphone. We ask those individuals from city staff who are testifying to please state your name, title, and the department you work for. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3.
Is there anyone that would like to testify on these items? Please come forward. Seeing none, I think there might be a motion to amend one.
We can vote on these items. Item 1A was introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Christensen.
I'd like to offer an amendment. It's come to our attention that Mr. Luke Pitts no longer wants to serve on the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Second.
Okay. Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion on this? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
And we can vote on which items again, Teresa?
We need to vote on the main motion
That was the
now.
amendment for
Oh, okay.
1A.
Okay, now on the main motion of 1A.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Then items 1, B, and C, and 2A through C were introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Schob. Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next are our public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward and raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 4A and B together. They are the application of Harley's Bait and Tackle for a Class D liquor license at 2834 South Folsom Street, Suite 2, and the related manager application of Harley Kelly.
Is Mr. Kelly here? Please come forward.
Do you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address,
Home address or the business address?
whichever one you want to use.
Harley Kelly, you want me to spell it too?
That's okay.
And 6725 Aylesworth Ave.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for coming forward. Tell us about your application and your application to be manager.
Well, I just have a bait and tackle shop. I want it to thrive a little more, and I think by having off sale there, it would help me through the winter and just be better business. I mean, that's all I got really. I mean, just want to keep it open, so.
And have you taken the liquor license
No,
training
it's
program?
supposed to be next month.
Next month?
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the city member I spoke to said to go through this first before I paid and did any other things to see what I got from you guys first.
Okay, terrific. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kelly? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
All right, next I'll call item 4C, the manager application of Jeremy Richter for Chili's Grill and Bar at 6730 South 27th Street. Would you raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Jeremy Richter, 6730 South 27th Street.
Thank you very much for coming down. Tell us a little bit about your application for manager.
I'm the recently acquired GM for the location. I've been with Chili's about a year now, and so having that status, they wanted me to be the person on the liquor license here for the local community representing Chili's. So,
Terrific. Are there any questions for Mr. Richter? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming down.
you bet.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item? All right, Teresa?
All right, if not, we can vote on these items if someone wishes to move.
I move approval of 4A through C.
Second.
Introduced by Christensen, seconded by Ward. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Item 5A is hearing on the 2020 1- and 6-year Streets and Highways Program as required by state statute.
And is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify on this item? I know that we are going to be requesting a delay of voting on it, but we can do that when we get into the voting on resolutions. Teresa, is that okay, or do you want us to do the delay now?
We can do it in the voting session.
Okay. Is there anyone that wanted to testify on the 1- and 6-year Streets and Highways Program? Mr. Cassidy, did you want to just come and say a few words, and we will most likely carry forward public hearing as well?
Yes, we're required to have a public hearing on the 1- and 6-year plan every year by state statute. We report the results of that hearing via council resolution to the Nebraska Department of Transportation. In this case, the 1- and 6-year plan presently includes the intersection of 14th and Warlick improvements that are also on your agenda in the form of a proposed ordinance. So it probably makes sense to delay the vote on that. And we'll get the information to the Nebraska Department of Transportation just as soon as we have the results.
Okay. Thank you very much. Teresa, you want to go on to the next item?
Sure. We'll go on to item 5B, approving an interlocal agreement between the Railroad Transportation Safety District and the city to transfer funding to the city for the 48th Street Underpass study.
Afternoon, Council. I'm Thomas Schaefer. I'm the Project Delivery Division Manager. This is an agreement between the city and the RTSD that allows us to jointly fund that project and that study that is going on. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 48th Street Underpass study? I mean, what are they examining?
So the long-range transportation plan, the next project that would be up for funding that's outside of the CIP right now is that stretch of 48th Street from Cornhusker Highway south to Adams. And shortly as you leave the Cornhusker intersection, you go underneath a railroad undercrossing. And we thought it wise to start some of the study process and reach out to the railroad and start talking to them about what their plans were, what some of the options might be, and just start laying some of the groundwork as that one starts to reach into the CIP in the upcoming years.
Has there been a tendency for that underpass to flood?
There are pumps there to handle stormwater, but there are times, I suppose, when the rain overwhelms the ability to pump it out, and you have a temporary condition where you don't want traffic to go in there.
I've seen the signs.
You've seen that? Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Schaefer? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify on this item? Okay, let's go on to the next.
All right, next is item 5C, approving an interlocal agreement with the Railroad Transportation Safety District and the city to transfer funding to the city for the Pine Lake Road from 61st Street to Highway 2 project.
Welcome back.
Thomas Schaefer, Public Works, or Lincoln Transportation Utilities Project Delivery, I'll put the dollar in later. Delivery Manager. Once again, this is an agreement between the city and the Railroad Transportation Safety District that allows us to accept funding from them as we work on the Pine Lake project. There's a railroad crossing there, and they are helping us fund parts of it for the safety improvements to that crossing upgrade.
Can you describe what the crossing upgrade will entail?
There'll be improved lights that go over that. There'll be a raised median in the area to keep people from going around and passing the gates. There'll be gates there now that aren't there. Those are the main things.
Okay. Wonderful.
Any other questions? Yes, Benny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Schaefer, I thought I heard you say, and I want you to repeat, they'll be helping us fund this. This will be money coming from RSTD to the city for these improvements.
Yes.
I wanted to stick that point.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on this item? Okay, let's go forward.
All right, next is item 5D, accepting a report of new and pending claims against the city for September 16th through 30th, 2019.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify on a claim? And Teresa, there was an email correspondence from someone that could not be here to testify, and I left it in the office.
Yes.
Let
there
me
was.
see if I have that here.
I think I can find it very quickly in mail.
Okay, it is, I see it was with Miss Lisa London. She is unable to attend tonight, so could we possibly delay a decision or keep it on, I guess, our next claim?
You want to delay
Let's
her?
ask Jeff what we should
Oh,
do.
all right.
We can delay the public hearing on her claim.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. What we typically do when we have someone that wants to attend and is unable to is you just make a motion to amend the report, remove their name from the report, and then we add it at the next date.
Okay, thank you.
Having heard that from City Law, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we remove Ms. London's claim from this report.
Second.
Okay, introduced by Shob, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Let's go ahead and call the roll on that one.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. All right, so we can vote on these items. Item 5A was introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Christensen, and we entertain a motion to delay until
Yes.
November 4th.
4th. I make a motion and to delay those items till November 4th,
Second.
2019. Thank you.
Okay, introduced by Ward, seconded by McGinnis. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried
Okay.
7-0. Then item 5B is the interlocal with the RTSD for the 48th Street Underpass Study, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. 5C is the interlocal with the RTSD for Pine Lake Road, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by McGinnis. Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 5D was introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Ward, seconded by Schob, and it's the amended to exclude Ms. London from her claim from this report.
Correct.
Okay, and please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then, our public hearing ordinances second reading. I'll call items 6A through B together. They are change of zone 19021, application of SB Partners and Lincoln Investment LLC for a change from H3 Highway Commercial to B2 Planned Neighborhood Business on property generally located at North 27th and Fletcher Avenue, and the related use permit to allow for 28,872 square feet of commercial floor area and 109 hotel rooms / multifamily dwelling units with waivers to setbacks.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mike Eckert with Civil Design Group on behalf of SB Partners. A few weeks ago, you may remember we had a text amendment before you that would allow residential units to be placed in the first floor of B2 areas that was co-authored between us and another firm. And so I'm here now to explain a little bit more about the specific application that we had in mind at that time. In your packet, you've seen a similar aerial photo here. This is 6.5 acres of land up at the intersection of North 27th Street and Fletcher Avenue that has been in the course of development actually over about 20 years. There is an existing hotel here, an office building, another office building, and a couple commercial retail pad sites that are just under development. Specifically, we began working with the planning department as this area is zoned H3 to look at the option of converting the hotel to a multifamily building. And once we worked through all the details on how B2 would be the best thing for that, given that its size and that it does have mixed uses on it, the only issue that was an impediment was this provision in the B2 code that did not allow residential units on the first floor of buildings. So with that, it's a pretty straightforward application, allows them the flexibility to do that if they would ever desire to do so. It also helps out on some parking issues with our neighbors to the south, and probably a logical area to have a B2 zoning instead of an H3. And like I said, give us that option to do residential units on the first floor of actually any of those buildings. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I don't think so. Well, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Oh.
I'm sorry. At some point, I'd like to have staff questions.
Certainly.
Is this the perfect time, or do we need to?
No. If, David Carey, do you want to come up and address any questions?
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department.
Thank you, Mr. Curry, for coming forward. This is a little weird and unusual that someone would like to convert temporary residence to multifamily. Have you seen anything like this before?
It does happen. It hasn't really happened very much, or if at all, here locally, but it is happening in some other places. We're supportive of it mainly because it provides for residential units in the existing part of the city, so that makes sense to us. And we're supportive of the change of zone to allow that to happen. The H3 doesn't allow residential units. They allow hotels, but not residential units, so we're supportive of the change of zone. And we were already supportive, as were you, when you approved the change in the zoning ordinance for the B2 to allow residential units on the first floor.
Well, we're just changing the zone today, or that's what that's the request in front of us. Would there be a development plan, or would they come back with other things later on? Will we get another chance to see this?
There is a use permit that goes along with this as well, so you're acting on both items, change of zone and use permit today. So they come packaged together, and so they have laid out their plan of what their proposal is.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff or applicant?
One quick question for, I don't care, either one. There's just cross easements on all these properties, is that correct, for access easements?
The B2 allows it, cross-access easements. They still need to be documented, if you will. And so we already have one with our neighbor to the south, and we'll do an expansion of that.
Okay.
You know, I failed to ask you, what is the timeline for this project? Where are you at?
Well, specifically on the conversion of the hotel, it is undefined at this moment. They're evaluating it. It's a franchise agreement in place that they need to begin to look at. But before they took those steps, they wanted to make sure that the option to change it to multifamily was fully codified.
Okay, and if we grant approval, then what are the next steps? What's the best case scenario for?
Best case scenario is that probably sometime in 2021, I would say mid-year perhaps. I don't know the exact termination date of the existing franchise agreement, but I believe it is in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on 6A and 6B? Okay, thank you. We can go on.
All right, I'll call items 6C through E together. They're the Huber Building Redevelopment Agreement with BFP LLC relating to redevelopment of property generally located at 803 Q Street, amending the fiscal year 1920 CIP to authorize and appropriate $550,000 in TIF funds and authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds. We did have a request of the applicant to continue public hearing to November 4th, but if there is anybody in the chambers that wishes to testify on these three items, they may do so.
Is there anyone that would like to testify on 6C, 6D, and E? If not, I will entertain a motion to delay the public hearing.
So moved to the 4th of November.
Okay.
Second.
And moved by Christensen, seconded by Washington. Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are items 6F through H. They are approving the Nebraska Innovation Campus Hotel Project Redevelopment Agreement with Nebraska Nova for redevelopment of property generally located at 21st and Transformation Drive, amending the fiscal year 1920 CIP to authorize and appropriate $5,600,000 in TIF funds and authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Director of Urban Development. What you have before you today are three different items. One is a redevelopment agreement. The second authorizes the use of $5.6 million of TIF and adjusts the CIP accordingly. And then the third has a TIF bond. With us here today are Tom Houston and Mike Rogers. Mike can speak to the tax allocation bond. What you have here is a project with a hotel, and across the street would be some parking that would be available temporarily until at some point in the future there'd be an elevated parking garage. This is part of two projects, the first being the hotel, and the second would be a building that would go over here, which would be an office building at some point in the future. There's been some renderings proposing what the building would look like. It's about a 150-room hotel project. And the unique aspect of this particular project is on the first floor they will have rooms for students to take classes out of. There are about 500 students at the University of Nebraska that take hospitality classes, and they've identified areas on the first floor where those classes would be held. And then what you have before you is within the redevelopment agreement is an allocation of the tax increment financing. Some of the funds go towards payment, the issue of the debt, an administration fee that goes to the city, streetscape, public improvements, and additional projects. And facade improvements would be put as the largest item on there, along with energy enhancements. I would open it up for any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Yes, Richard.
In the redevelopment agreement, does it break out the hotel project from the office project, or in the tiffing, and how does that work if the office?
So the office is coming later, so you will
Okay,
see a
so these
redevelopment
are- this-
agreement.
the
This is
hotel.
only for the hotel.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Houston.
That would be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln. Appearing before you today on behalf of Nebraska Nova and SDL 6 LLC. With me today is Zach Wiegert and Ashley Solt, both of Nebraska Nova. I would ask for your support of the three items. I want to focus my attention on the redevelopment agreement, since that's the document with which I'm most intrigued. This project is located at the corner of 21st and Transformation Drive in the Innovation Campus. According to my count, this is the 7th building and the 5th project in Innovation Campus since it was formulated approximately 12 years ago. So I think it's doing well as an innovation campus. This project would involve an investment of approximately $35 to $36 million by Nebraska Nova into this facility, and we're asking for support of the $5.6 million tax increment financing amount listed in the redevelopment agreement and in the bond ordinance. A couple things I wanted to point out. I put the next slide up to show the relationship between Transformation Drive and really Salt Valley Roadway, because one large item on the sources and uses of the funds that it's attached to the redevelopment agreement is the utilization of those funds to complete Transformation Drive and make the connection as a public street. It is a public street within the subdivision to Salt Creek Roadway. I always have to look to see what that name is, but that will dramatically affect and improve the circulation within Innovation Campus. In addition to the completion of that road, we'll be looking to use tax increment financing. It's not that I'm holding out from, kind of am, but I was presented with this. This is a new drawing. Since we were in front of you on the plan amendment, we were in front of the Urban Design Committee, and there were some very good comments, and the architects took them to heart and came up with an additional rendering that shows how the hotel could look at this location within the Innovation Campus. And we'll be utilizing a portion of those tax increment financing proceeds for the facade enhancements of the facility as allowed by the Nebraska Community Development Law. The energy enhancement that is listed in the redevelopment agreement really relates to the CRES, the CRES, which is municipal owned. The city of Lincoln owns it. It is the gray water system coming out of the Teresa Street plant that stands for the centralized renewable energy system, and that will be continue to be implemented on Innovation Campus and provide heating and cooling for this facility in addition to everything else. A little bit on the schedule.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this project? Yes.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government. We don't like this arrangement at all. We've said it's going to take some business from the downtown hotels that are not making it the way they would like to. And some studies have said that we have too many hotels in Lincoln, Nebraska at this time. We believe the TIF arrangement is not appropriate also. The university should be doing some of this financing itself. Basically, what we're doing is having city taxpayers provide assistance to the university. And while we appreciate the university in the city is not in good financial situation, and we see this as an inappropriate gift to the university.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item? You can come on down. We have another podium right there.
My name is Joni Mueller. I'm just a little interested in this because I've never heard of this. How much money has the city invested in this kind of thing before with the college? Have we invested in this TIF fund? Or the hotel that we're talking about? Innovation Campus.
I'd have to defer to staff to, are you asking a general question, like how much in tax increment financing?
How much city taxpayers' money have we put into this kind of thing?
Could they address that on rebuttal?
Okay. Do you have any other questions? Because then we'll have staff come up and address them.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mueller. All right, staff, would you like to address that question on tax increment financing?
Well, I was just visiting with Tom. We don't have a readily available number as to what the total amount of tax increment financing has gone into Innovation Campus, but I'm sure it would be somewhere between $10 and $20 million. And just as a reminder, I'm sure Council's aware, the way increment financing works is it is the increase over the tax base, which is used towards the payment of the bonds that are issued. So in this particular case, the $5.6 million is paid for from the increment. Taxpayers are not on the hook on that. If the note were to fail, it is issued through a bank that Nebraska Nova would be taking party to, and they would be obligated to pay that note, not taxpayers. The improvements, when this was originally envisioned, there were street improvements. As many of you will know, this was an area of town that hosted the state fair for probably over 100 years. There weren't traditional roads, sewers, and other sorts of traditional city type of infrastructure out in that area. So the TIF has been used to be able to provide those kinds of infrastructure improvements out in State Fair Park as these projects have come along. Just as in this particular case, the completion of Innovation Drive is completed by the use of the tax increment financing. There was a comment about how this hotel could take away business from the downtown. There has been studies of the number of rooms that we have in the city, and while I'm saying we certainly do have a large number of rooms, but the downtown area was the only area of Lincoln that saw an uptick in revenues per available room for the hotel industry within Lincoln. So I think the downtown area is doing fine. And as far as, I think we've covered the issue Ms. Kinsley brought up, which was the payment of the tax increment finance is actually financed through a note that's drafted and held at a bank and then covered by the increment that's paid off of that. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much. We've asked, is there anyone else that wants to testify on this item? Okay, we can go on to the next.
All right, next is item 6I, approving the transfer of unspent and unencumbered appropriations from the 14th Warlick Old Cheney Road CIP project to the Transportation and Utilities Street Improvement Fund and postponing appropriations within the CIP for this project to the 2024-25 fiscal year.
Thank you. The process is as follows. We're going to have staff come up and answer questions from City Council. If there are any, we will have no formal presentation on this project. As many in the audience are probably familiar with it, it has been a number of open houses and discussions and presentations and competitive studies done. So we will have staff come forward to answer any questions from the city council members. And then the next process, we will have those testify in favor of the delay come forward and speak on the project, and then those who do not support the delay will speak after them. And I'm just kind of curious, if we could ask those in the audience, if you support the delay, could you please stand up so that we could count you? Okay, please stay standing. How many of you plan to testify tonight? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. You may sit down. And could we ask those who plan to testify against delaying this project, if you could stand, please. All right. Thank you very much. And how many of you would like to testify? Raise your hand. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all very much. So we will ask staff to come forward, and we will open it up to questions from city council members.
I'm Tom Cassidy, the interim director of Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, and relatively new in this role, but I've brought back up in the form of Thomas Schaefer, who heads our project delivery division, and also my assistant director for transportation, Lonnie Bjorklund.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cassidy or Mr. Schaefer or Lonnie in the audience?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you for coming forward. Mr. Cassidy, could you give us just the box top review of the history of this project? So how long has the city been working on this intersection? What is the problem of this intersection? Like, what are you trying to resolve?
The area of 14th and Warlick's been under study for about 20 years, starting in the late 1990s and early 2000s. It's a problematic area because there are a number of intersections that are very close together there with a fairly high traffic volume. Traffic volume right now at the busiest of those intersections, 14th and Old Cheney, is just under 40,000 vehicles a day. And the area as a whole has a history of fairly high traffic crashes, including fairly severe crashes. It's landlocked. There's not much space there. There are two large employers on the southeast and southwest corner in Fiserv and Design Data, so there's not a lot of land to look at for improvements to the area. And the city has been involved in a rather lengthy process, including lots of public involvement, presentations, public process, public website, public meetings, public testimony, Planning Commission, City Council, Capital Improvement Project, and a very unique design competition that was held a few years ago where engineering firms were invited to submit creative designs given the space limitations there. It was from that design competition that this design emerged, and it's been in the Capital Improvement Plan approved by the Planning Commission and by the City Council for several years now. So we're looking to improve a problematic area, not just the intersection of 14th and Warlick, but all of the intersections in that immediate area, and to improve traffic flow and to improve safety.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Well, I have a few. So, can you tell us exactly how many
this involves?
So, I want to thank all the people that came to testify. I know that takes you away from work and other family activities. And I also want to thank all the people that have been emailing, and certainly we've been getting quite a steady stream of those that are emailing. And so what I glean from some of the requests, I hear from a lot of people that they say that this project of the 7 intersections of 14th and Old Cheney, 14th and Warlick Road is going to be in conflict with the South Beltway in terms of the disruption along Highway 77, that it'll, I guess, shut down traffic flow in southwest Lincoln, or it'll just push all the traffic onto 27th and 40th Streets.
Mm-hmm. We've looked at that, and it's our opinion at Lincoln Transportation and Utilities as well as our consultant, that there will be very little interplay between the 14th and Warlick project and the various projects that make up the South Beltway. The primary reason for that is that the South Beltway is being built about a half-mile south of Saltillo Road, so it's a few miles away from 14th and Warlick, and it's being built by the State Department of Transportation in a way that uses phases to minimize the disruption of the intersecting north-south roads on Saltillo. Those roads like South 54th Street, South 35th Street, are essentially rural section roads. They have fairly low traffic volumes compared to what we experience inside the city. And the state has designed detour routes for those roads that really minimize the impact that will have on traffic further north into the city limits. They've also decided that they're not going to close any of those north-south rural roads that are adjacent to one another. They're section lines at the same time. So they won't close 54th Street at the same time they close South 68th Street, for example. They also have committed to keep Highway 77 open with at least one lane in each direction, north and south. That's exactly what it's like today. Highway 77 has a construction project going on between Saltillo Road and Old Cheney now that has it narrowed to one lane in each direction, so they'll keep that same kind of traffic pattern with at least one lane open in each direction during the entire period that the South Beltway is under construction. We don't think it's going to dramatically impact the traffic flow on 14th Street. Obviously, anytime you have a construction project of this magnitude, there are going to be people that have to find another route and use a detour. But with Highway 77 open, Saltillo Road open throughout the construction projects, we're talking about lane closures, not complete closures that could more intensely impact traffic.
So if people don't want to believe you, and what website can you direct them to go and find, I guess, the detour routes being proposed by the Nebraska Department of Transportation, or that, the validation of that Highway 77 will be open throughout the entire project, and where can they go and find that information?
There is a website that the State Department of Transportation has for the South Beltway Lincoln project. If you Google South Beltway Lincoln, you'll find that website easily. And the information that I've described to you is published on that public website. I would also mention that the state has other experience in major roadway projects like this, where there are multiple highways involved and sometimes even multiple projects going on with adjacent cities. A good example of that in Lincoln was the construction of the diverging diamond interchange at Northwest 48th Street and Interstate 80. The city of Lincoln had a major construction project going on Northwest 48th, widened it from a 2-lane rural cross-section to 4-lane divided with turn lanes. At the same time, the state was doing the intersection of Northwest 48th and Interstate 80, the interchange there. Interstate 80, of course, is one of the busiest highways in the nation, and all of that work went on with all those roadways open during the entire construction period. Not to say that people weren't inconvenienced a little bit at times during that construction, but the traffic kept flowing. Another really good example of this was the construction in Omaha of the Dodge Street Expressway. A massive project. I'm sure most of you have driven that or seen it. And during the entire time that was under construction, there was also work being done by the Nebraska Department of Transportation about 2 miles away at Interstate 80 and Interstate 680, which, as many of you know, has been under construction on many, many occasions during our lifetimes. Another third example might be the intersection in Nebraska City of Highway 2 and Highway 75. Two major highways, heavy traffic volume, turned from a conventional signal-controlled intersection into an elevated roadway with an interchange, and the entire time that project was under construction on those two major highways, both of those highways remained open for traffic. So I think the state has a really good record of working with other local construction projects to minimize these disruptions, and although I expect we'll all be thankful when any major construction project completes, I don't see this as being insurmountable or particularly interactive in terms of the 14th and Warlick interchange interacting with the other work that's going on the South Beltway.
I've heard from other folks that have emailed that the traffic counts. I mean, why are we building all these improvements to these intersections when we're going to have the South Beltway, and so the traffic counts should stay about flat? Why are we investing all this money in this particular network of intersections when the traffic counts should stay flat with the South Beltway being built?
Well, we're really hoping that the South Beltway helps with the traffic counts, preventing those from continuing to increase, at least along Highway 2. That's what that South Beltway is meant to do. It's meant to divert traffic off of Highway 2. But the traffic at 14th and Warlick and 16th and Old Cheney and 14th and Old Cheney and so forth, that's local traffic. That's people who are driving to and from school, to and from work, navigating around the city. So a fairly small amount of that is traffic that would be diverted onto the South Beltway when it's completed. So we don't think those traffic volumes will decrease. In fact, the modeling we've done suggests that the traffic counts there will be increasing during the lifespan of this project.
Will it be increasing to what numbers, and is it because of development going to, I guess, additional development happening in that southwest quadrant of the city because of the South Beltway?
A little under 40,000 cars per day at the most recent traffic count, which I believe was 2018, projected to increase by 2025 to around 60,000 vehicles per day. New development that's going on, new residential development, new commercial development. If you drive down South 14th Street or you go out West Denton Road, you find a lot of new rooftops, a lot of new businesses, and that's what's driven the delays that we experience now. And for the 40 or so thousand people that come through this intersection now, I'm sure they could all tell you that there are some pretty significant backups that occur both northbound and southbound on 14th, for example, during the rush hour, and also on Old Cheney Road.
Can you talk a little bit about how a project this size compares to some of the other projects that have been done throughout the city? I mean, how do the costs compare? Like, I know that we're going to be talking about 33rd and Cornhusker. Well, in fact, we have been talking about 33rd and Cornhusker for quite some time, but how does it compare to some of the intersections that are going to be improved or overpasses on that, as well as different quadrants of the city? I know that we've had a number of projects going on for a long time.
This is a fairly large project for Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. The project at Northwest 48th and Interstate 80 is probably the one that's most comparable in the recent past, but that was both State of Nebraska Department of Transportation project, and the North 48th piece through the Arnold Heights neighborhood was Lincoln Transportation Utilities. So that's the project that I can think of that would probably be of the most similar scope in recent years. On the horizon, we have the 33rd and Cornhusker project that's the Railroad Transportation Safety District and the city will be involved in. And that project right now is currently estimated to be about $90 million. So this is nowhere near that same size.
In the project at Northwest 48th and I guess, is it Adams?
Yes, I'll have to defer on that. I don't have those numbers with me right at the moment. I suspect that the overall price of that total project, if you added up what the state did, what the city did, is probably still a little bit less, but I'd have to get those exact numbers for you.
Okay. Thomas, do you have those numbers?
Thomas Schaefer with Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. The project out there between the city and the state, and as some of you may remember who was on the council, we loaned part of our federal aid to the state in order to coordinate those at the same time. It was about $49.2 million between those two projects. $20 million on the city part, $29 million on the state part.
And then another, I guess, from 48th and Adams to Superior, how much was just that scope of it?
The Northwest 48th?
Mm-hmm.
That was 20.2.
20 million. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to clarify, Director Cassidy, on 33rd and Cornhusker, we talk about 90 million, but what of that is actually the city budget? Because the RTSD and other state money, as I understand it, I just spoke with Roger Feigard last week. Can you break that down for us or someone?
I cannot unless Thomas or Lonnie has it. I do want to point out, though, that it's all taxpayer money, so this is not being paid for by private funds. In part or
I
in
understand,
whole.
but
Yeah.
when we talk city project to city project, I think it's important for the record to have that breakdown if someone has it. I thought I had it in my notes, but
I believe that a portion of the quarter-cent sales tax that the voters approved in May is going towards 33rd and Cornhusker. Do you remember?
$1.2 million.
$1.2 million every year? Every year?
Total.
Yeah, but-
Total.
Councilmember Ward would be happy to get that number for you. I don't have access
that's
to it right
fine.
at the moment.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
So with all these projects you've talked about, there was some federal dollars, some state dollars, and some city dollars. How much in federal dollars is going in, or state dollars is going into the proposed project at 14th and Warlick?
It's a city project, Councilman, so it's funded by the city, not by the state or the Railroad Transportation Safety District.
Right.
Are there any other questions? Well, we might call you all back up for rebuttal. And for those giving public testimony in favor of delaying this project, could you kind of get in the first two rows and get ready to testify? Each one of you has 5 minutes, and we'll try to keep this moving, so please don't be shy. And we do ask that you sign in, please, so that it will help for our public records.
And there are 2 microphones.
2 microphones. All right, the first testifier, welcome. What?
You want us in the rows or you want us up here in lines?
They can be in the front rows, and we can have testifier number 2 right up at the microphone. Get ready to roll. Okay. All right, you each have 5 minutes. Welcome.
Yes, Taylor Wyatt, 927 North 86th Street. I'm here speaking on behalf of Home Builders Association of Lincoln. I'm going to read a letter penned by our president. The intersections of 14th Street, Warlick Boulevard, and Old Cheney are some of the best access points to Southwest Lincoln from Highway 77. The intersections are overwhelmed with added traffic from local business, schools, and surrounding area. Construction of the South Beltway will restrict Lincoln along Saltillo, making it important to keep 14th Warlick and Old Cheney intersections open until the Beltway is completed. The Home Builders Association of Lincoln is supportive of the solution to fix the intersection of 14th Warlick and Old Cheney. However, we urge the City Council to vote in favor of Councilman McGinnis's ordinance to eliminate the appropriations and transfer the unspent cash from 14th Warlick and Old Cheney Road Project to the Transportation System Optimization Project and Impact Fees District 7, which would delay the construction of the proposed roundabout. We feel the delay is important to keep accessibility to Highway 77 and for the southwest quadrant of the city while there is restricted access due to the South Beltway construction. The redirection of $19.4 million from this project could be used for street improvements on 27th Street, which is still a 2-lane road half a mile south of Yankee Hill Road and will become connecting point to the South Beltway. Other arterials which will see an increase in traffic from the completion of the South Beltway could also benefit from the redirection of funds. Thank you for your consideration. That letter basically sums up the feelings of our membership, and I'll answer any questions you have in regards to that.
Could you email that?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I'll make sure it's sent to all of you.
Thank you very much for testifying.
You bet.
Next testifier.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Scott Lose. I live at 5735 Limestone Road, which is a small neighborhood of approximately 75 homes, kind of tucked behind Christ Place back there. I've lived there for 23 years. I would like to take this opportunity to offer support for an ordinance currently before the Lincoln City Council. Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Also offer my feedback concerning the proposed roundabout at 14th and Old Cheney. First, I do support Councilman McGinnis's ordinance to delay the project and defer appropriated funds to other street projects throughout the city. The congestion at this intersection did not happen overnight, but instead has occurred over a period of roughly 20 years as the city has continued to grow to the south. I do believe there are more cost-effective alternatives to building a $36 million roundabout that have not been given consideration. Second, as city officials, you have the responsibility to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. Moving forward with this project without giving full consideration to alternatives is not being fiscally responsible. I have attended most all of the public meetings concerning this project, and a common thread that I saw throughout was not if a roundabout was needed, but what type. As city leaders, when you ask for public input, it's important to consider public testimony as we give it. I live in this area and travel through this intersection many times each day, and I do too feel that frustration as I sit through sometimes multiple lights. Fact, Old Cheney Road was never designed to carry the amount of traffic that it does today. As you leave the intersection going west on Old Cheney, it narrows from 4 lanes to 2. I believe this is a major reason for a lot of the congestion in that intersection up there. Now, I will tell you historically, and we've kind of talked about some of that already, that a cul-de-sac on either side of the railroad crossing was discussed early in this process to alleviate a lot of that peak time traffic inflow into the intersection. Alleviating the incoming traffic from the west on Old Cheney, making surface improvements to the intersection, and better synchronizing the lights without building a $36 million, and I've recently read as much as $50 million to build an elevated roundabout is a much better alternative to what we have before us today. Creating a cul-de-sac on each side of the railroad crossing would be a win-win. It would allow access to Wilderness Park from the west and still allow access from Old Cheney to Salt Valley View, Wilmer's Addition. There's a small office building just to the south of 7th and Old Cheney. I believe this could be accomplished at a much lower cost to the city, short of building the proposed $36 million elevated roundabout, with having low or no impact to all stakeholders. The other point, I'm not sure if this has been addressed at any point. Councilwoman Raybold, I know when you and I talked, you asked if I was a traffic engineer, and I said no, and I appreciate the question. But what I do have is 32 years of public safety background, 29 of which is in paid fire service. I would like to talk about NFPA 1710, which is the organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and special operations to the public by career fire departments. I know that Lincoln Fire Department participates in an accreditation program. So the fire chief
1 minute.
And the city as a whole has said, yes, we will show up at your door if your house is on fire with at least one engine company within 4 minutes. If the roundabout is built, that takes away access to the Salt Valley neighborhood, except from the north, and Wilmer's Addition, which is the furthest neighborhood to the north of Old Cheney on South 7th. The city is saying we can have a fire truck parked in front of your house within 4 minutes if your house is on fire. I would stake 32 years of experience that that would not happen based on this new design. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm not as well spoken as my dad, but you're going to hear an earful. These automobiles.
Could you identify yourself?
Jack Lose. I live right next door to my son on Limestone.
You were being funny.
Anyway, $36 million is not going to pay for this project. And I think, from what I've read and seen, they've added another cul-de-sac where you come out of our neighborhood behind Christ Place Church. I don't think that was added into the $36 million. What about the drainage ditch there? It's going to take a powerful concrete culvert to carry that water. If it doesn't carry the water, it's going to go act like a dam and go over the highway, which it has done now. But $36 million, think about that. And you can't patch a pothole out here on 40th Street? What's going on? I've lived in Lincoln all my life, and I can't believe that this money is being spent like it's being spent. You take the cars that go down Oshini right now and merge onto Oshini going east. They eventually go to 27th Street, 40th Street, 56th Street, whichever streets go south. And they turn. You go down to 27th Street in the rush hour, and I live there. I've been there, and it's packed. Why not think about going farther south? Lincoln is moving to the south and the southeast and to the southwest, mainly into the southeast. Go down there and go through Rokeby Road. Cut another road through there. And these people, it's going to leave traffic on this thing they want to build there. So why not do that? And you're not going to sit there, nobody's going to sit there and tell me, and I've been in Lincoln all my life, 75 years, that you're going to pay for that roundabout and all the stuff that goes with it for $36 million. It isn't going to happen. I've never seen a project yet in Lincoln, there may be a few, that's kept within budget or below budget. And this is one of the biggest projects that's been built in Lincoln. And we've got politicians sitting back here that's going to, call me a liar on this, but I'm not. Maybe they should go into politics instead of city. But this roundabout is a mistake. One of the things that's going to happen, they'll end up building another roundabout at 27th Street, maybe at, what street go through there, 40th Street. So what are you going to do? You're going to go roundabout here, and a roundabout here, and a roundabout here. You're going to get dizzy. Yeah, I'm making fun, but that's the way it's going to be. And the city of Lincoln they don't have the money. They can't take care of the streets. They raise the sales tax. They raise the wheel tax over and over and over. When the wheel tax first came in, it was $4 a wheel. Great. Now I go down and license my pickup, and I think, holy, I should live someplace else. And if I was younger, I would. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Be sure and sign in.
I did.
Okay, next testifier. Welcome.
Dana Stefanidis.
I'm sorry, say your name again, please.
Dana Stefanidis. You want time to spell that?
If you write it down, we'll get it correct.
All right.
Thank you.
1820 Sunny Hill Road. I'm glad we're having this opportunity to reason this out. I was a little surprised a few weeks ago to get a visit from Midwest right away to my place of business. He said he was there on behalf of the city to explain to me that he was about the project and how it was going to move forward and how he was going to acquire land. And for my time, for him explaining to me what was happening, I was to be compensated $100. I thought that was very interesting. I further asked him, is this part of the cost of implementing the project? And he really didn't have an answer for me. So speaking of cost, disruption, perceived or real, affects business. I'm a local native. I'm a small business owner as well. And to take, for example, just a couple of years ago, the resurfacing of 14th Street did affect business. Upwards of 30% revenue drop for some of those local businesses. Again, disruption, perceived or real, will affect business. So I really urge the council to consider the disruption of this project. Again, delaying the one project and addressing the street repair for the whole of Lincoln immediately would better serve neighborhoods and local business. Like I said, I am a member of the business community and a Lincoln native. I'm here just to support myself, support the neighborhood, but also look at the benefit of the whole of Lincoln. Let's look at it that way. And this is just a delay. We're not saying not to do it. I'm not blind to the fact that there is an issue at this intersection, but also not take into consideration the whole of Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier, please. And the testifier in waiting, please step up to the open podium. Don't be shy. Mr. Catt.
Hi, my name is Dustin Antonello. I'm appearing on behalf of the Lincoln Independent Business Association, and we're located at 620 North 48th Street here in Lincoln, Nebraska. LIBA supports delaying the construction of the $36 million elevated roundabout near 14th Street and Warlick Boulevard by 5 years and putting that money set aside for the project towards street repair in all 4 quadrants of the city. The main reason LIBA supports a delay is out of concern that construction of the elevated roundabout will overlap with the construction of the South Beltway by at least 2 years, most likely 3 years. Since construction of the South Beltway will lead to road closures at Sotilla Road and Highway 77, drivers' options to travel north and south throughout Southwest Lincoln over that 2 to 3 year time frame will be severely limited. This will lead to congestion on other north-south arterials across the city, such as 27th and 40th Streets, which are already jammed during rush hour. Despite assurances from LTU that the project will be phased in order to avoid overlap, delays in construction caused by weather or other unplanned circumstances can alter construction timelines. Several business owners that are located near the 14th and Warlick intersection have expressed concerns to us about losing customers once construction of the roundabout and the South Beltway begin. At a time when brick and mortar stores are already struggling to compete with online retailers, the city should be more cognizant of the impact of limiting access to local businesses. Customers have many choices when deciding which businesses to visit. If it becomes a hindrance to get to a place of business, the risk of losing customers becomes much greater. An additional benefit of delaying construction of the elevated roundabout is that it will allow the city to divert nearly $20 million from the project to pay for badly needed street repairs throughout all 4 quadrants of the city. Each year, the city falls about $26 million short in funding for road maintenance and new street construction, according to the Citizens Transportation Coalition. The revenue from the quarter-cent sales tax will cover half of these needs, but there will still be a $13 million annual gap, even with the additional revenues from the sales tax increase. The proponents of the roundabout argue that construction costs for the project will increase by 5% for each year that is delayed due to inflation. But the same is also true of the cost for street repairs. In 5 years, the gap to fund street repairs and construction will grow to $65 million, and that does not include inflation. At the recent public hearings on how to spend the quarter-cent sales tax, the community overwhelmingly voiced their opinion that arterial streets that are all-inclusive of the city need to be fixed first. Rather than single out streets in their own neighborhood, attendees asked for the sales tax increase to go toward fixing north-south arterials such as 40th Street, 56th Street, and 70th Street. These are streets that will see even more vehicles once traffic is diverted away from the construction zones in Southwest Lincoln. Instead of spending $36 million to improve one intersection, we believe the most equitable approach would be to take the $19.4 million saved from delaying this project and put it toward fixing arterial streets across Lincoln. LIBA is also concerned that the $36 million price tag to construct the 14th and Warlick elevated roundabout will end up being higher, even if the project goes forward as planned. The $36 million figure does not factor in how much it will cost for utility relocation and additional right-of-way acquisition. In addition, there have only been 2 elevated roundabouts built in the United States, one in Indiana and one in New York. So there is not a good historical track record on which to obtain accurate construction costs. Finally, we want to be clear that LIBA is not suggesting that this project be permanently abandoned. We simply believe that the best course of action is to delay construction of the elevated roundabout until the South Beltway is completed. Delaying this project will ensure that there will be no overlap with the construction of the South Beltway, and it will lessen the chances that road closures in Southwest Lincoln will lead to congestion on alternative north-south routes.
1 minute.
The added benefit of supporting a delay is it will allow the City Council to divert the funds earmarked for the roundabout toward critical street repair that will benefit all Lincoln citizens. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Antonello. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier, and testifier in the waiting, please step forward.
Hello, my name is Todd Miller. I'm out of the Meadows neighborhood. Several of our neighbors are here. And first of all, I guess, you go through all the plans and whatnot, and I'd like to know exactly how many roundabouts are there actually going to be with this project? Is there going to be 4, or is it just the 1 roundabout? Because if I'm not mistaken, the dollar amount only includes the 1 raised roundabout. Is that correct?
We can have staff answer your questions. So please continue with your testimony.
Okay. And again, they were talking about the 2 roundabouts in the United States. If I'm not mistaken, there's only 2 of these that have been built. One of them's in London and one of them's in Boston. Is that correct? As far as the plans for this?
We'll have him answer your question, but keep going.
Because to me, it's like I think we're all in agreement here that We need something, but we don't need that. We're losing small businesses if this were to come in. When they resurface 14th Street, I know there's a lot of smaller businesses that were hindered by that. I know we have a big dog sitting on the corner, and because the big dog moved in, you know, we've had water issues, running off issues down Old Cheney. We've had to fight that. We've had to fight Creekside coming through our neighborhood through Old Cheney. So there's several things that our neighborhood is great. It's small. There's 75 houses, basically. We don't need all that stuff. And this is not a very, very good solution, in my opinion. When you get to the roundabout thing, I've noticed that, you know, we talk about roundabouts in Lincoln. Does everybody know where all the roundabouts are? They're in non-populated areas where we don't see them, it seems like. And it's for new construction, but you look at the 14th and Superior roundabout, what do we do? What do we have to do to make that one work? You can't see who's coming. We got those funny things. We've changed the design several times. It's just, not only is it an eyesore, it's a big dollar expense that we shouldn't be put through. There is a solution out there. This isn't the solution. We need a solution. And again, this is not the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the council. My name is Diana Schilf, and I'm the current president of the Realtors Association of Lincoln. We are an association representing the voices of 1,000 of your constituents who are realtors and real estate professionals in Lincoln and Lancaster County. I appear before you today on their behalf and behalf of our board of directors in support of Councilman McGinnis's ordinance to delay the roundabout project at 14th and Old Cheney and Warlick Boulevard, and to use the money on other street needs in growing parts of all 4 quadrants of the city. The Realtors Association of Lincoln wants to be clear, the area in question may need improvements to traffic flow, for safety, and for the convenience of homeowners and businesses in the area. However, this ordinance won't prevent that, either today or in the future. All this does is offer the council, this mayor, and a new director of the Transportation and Utilities Department a chance to take a second look. Passing this ordinance also acknowledges public perception. This isn't a popular solution. It has the very real potential to exceed the $36 million price tag, and to construct it before seeing what effects the South Beltway has on traffic flows could be a mistake. So slowing down, taking a second look, would be in line with what's best about living in Lincoln. I ask you to think back to the arena project, when the economy went into recession and the city acted wisely to delay a public referendum on the project. And I think we all can agree with this quote from the then mayor, Chris Beitler, when he had the courage to stand before the public and say, "Delay does not mean abandonment. It will be worth the wait." We would be proud to say that about this project, if after a second look, this is the right solution. So don't fall victim to failure of imagination. There's other solutions. So delaying this project, not abandoning it, taking a second look and using the money to fix crumbling streets across the city is the right thing to do. So our association implores you to put your name on that plan that Councilman McGinnis has brought forward, not on a plan with so many questions about design, popularity, cost, and timing. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for testifying. Mr. Catt.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, member of the City Council. My name is Peter Catt. I'm appearing this afternoon on behalf of myself as a taxpayer of the City of Lincoln and someone with a 20-year plus or so history of knowing the 14th and Old Cheney and Warlick interchange. My involvement with it started when I was on the school board and we built the new high school down on 14th and Pine Lake Road. At that point in time, the school board asked the city, what are we going to do about 14th Street? And if you may recall, at that point in time, it was a 2-lane asphalt road. City said, no problem, we'll get it built. 2 years after the high school opened, the city finally got around to doing it. And at that time, the interchange at 14th and Old Cheney was still a problem. Yes. And there were discussions about how could we make that intersection better.
It was etched into my brain at that point in time with one of the city officials at that time told me, if we make those improvements, we'll never get the money to do it right. Meaning, if we made it better, we could never make it perfect. Fast forward to today, 20 years is what Mr. Cassidy has said. What he didn't tell you is we've spent $6 million studying it. Studying it. I was at a chamber meeting last week, 6 or maybe 8, I don't know how many, consultants that the city's paying. We probably spend $1,200 an hour to have consultants show up at a chamber meeting to tell us what a grand project this double-decker roundabout is. It is. It's phenomenal. This intersection is designed to handle 60,000 vehicles 20 years into the future at an A service level. Ask yourself, how many intersections in the city of Lincoln today operate an A level of service? Much less at a projected one 20 years into the future. That's the problem that I have. This is a fundamental problem with our existing was Public Works, Lincoln Transportation Utilities, is they love grand projects. What most of us taxpayers want is the heavy lifting, hard, unsexy work of keeping potholes filled and streets we can drive on. That's a much better priority for us to focus on. That's what I'd ask you to do. Councilman McGinnis, thanks for thinking about deferring this. It gives us a chance to be thoughtful. It's not that we're without good places to go put our road money to, that I think the community will appreciate a whole lot better than over-designing an intersection improvement project that will last much longer than it needs to. I think that if a majority of the taxpayers were asked, should we spend this money on this project today, I believe a lot of them would say no. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for testifying.
Thank you.
Mr. Zaire.
Madam Chair, Lincoln Zaire, 4921 South 76th, here today on behalf of myself. A couple of things I want to point out before I get into my own comments. First of all, the Beltway, as it's designed, was shelved in 2009 because there was no funding. This design competition that happened for this roundabout happened in 2012. So in the context of the design, there was no Beltway. So as an individual, I fail to understand how we can sit here and make the argument that the design that we have today took into consideration the impact of the Beltway when there was no funding. It was dead, DOA. Additionally, having only had 2 of these built in the United States, whether it's here or London or anywhere else, doesn't make any difference. I've seen architectural estimates at Hampton Enterprises be 20, 30, 40% off. This is a once, twice, third time in a lifetime construction build, and I will tell you that people don't know how to build it. And I will guarantee you it's not going to be $30 million in construction costs. So, getting to my specific comments, I have had the opportunity to listen to a number of presentations on the project. Incidentally, nearly all of those presentations were made by people that were on the Lincoln City payroll and fostering or furthering others' agendas, and or they were individuals who have been and are continuing to profit financially from the project going forward. From those presentations, I do understand that the intersection is of concern. The city held a design competition, acknowledge that. They held community meetings. The public had input on the design. But there are many intersections in this city that are dangerous and cause great concern for safety. In fact, based on the latest available data from LTU, 33 other intersections rank higher than 14th and Old Cheney. Ironically, 14th and Superior roundabout is ranked 19th. And that's after we've substantially pared it down from what it was designed to do. I don't mean to be flippant about this comment, but having public select a design for the project without having full cost information is like asking my spouse to select my house based upon going to the Parade of Homes brochure and not knowing the cost. This is not a value judgment about prioritizing safety concerns of that intersection. It's simply about 4 things: want, afford, willingness, and priority. This is a decision that every taxpayer across this city makes every single day, and it doesn't make any difference what your economic status is or isn't. We're making choices as do we buy a latte on our way to work, do we make coffee at home? We're making a choice about what do we eat out or we cook at home. Filet mignon or sirloin, grow vegetables or buy them. Sometimes the choices are far more vital between food, clothing, and shelter. I'm not saying filet mignon is better than sirloin. I'm not saying eating at home is less desirable than eating out. I'm saying they're all choices. And we are constantly having to weigh what we want with what we can afford. And even still, I would argue that many of us can afford things that we still choose not to buy, because the consequences of spending that money on those things is simply not what we are willing to sacrifice. So what we do is we settle back to what we're willing to pay for. Given our situation, we have badly needed street repairs we can't pay for. To do this now, or to do it, we have to do it now because it's going to go up 5% every year. That argument is honestly absolutely asinine, because we have street repairs that we can't fund today. If we had the money to fund all of the street repairs that we wanted to, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, but we don't. Even the mayor's task force that was assigned a year ago said that we're $13 million short of funding. If in 3 years this moves forward and we haven't done anything else, we will be $50 million short. I believe we should prioritize the needs that most benefits all of the taxpayers in the city of Lincoln. I urge you to vote yes on Councilman McGinnis's amendment. 14th and Old Cheney isn't this council's project. It isn't this administration's project. It was pushed forward by another administration. You have an opportunity to do the right thing here. Do your part to spend street funds wisely. If it still makes sense after the Beltway is truly understood, then so be it. We'll do it. Meanwhile, we will have significantly improved the streets across the city of Lincoln. I thank you for your time, madam. If there's questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right, thank you very much. Next testifier, and next testifier in the waiting, please stand up and come forward. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Bettenhausen. I live at 6501 Lone Tree Drive. I've been a resident of Lincoln for over 70 years. I've never spoke here before and probably won't ever speak here again. But this roundabout has just got me fired up. I use that intersection over the last 70-some years. I've used it thousands of times. When we put the $50 yield sign in, it was a big, big improvement. It was kind of a hodgepodge before that, but somebody decided to put in a yield right-of-way sign there when you go south. I used it twice this morning, twice at noon, and my friend that lives by me, we just came down and went through it again. And the longest wait we had at that intersection at the 8 o'clock rush hour, the 12 o'clock rush hour, and just starting the 4 o'clock rush hour, Tom, I think was probably about 35 seconds, wasn't it? About 35 seconds. One light, 2 cars. Don't waste your money on this now. I know everybody says we spent $6 million, $9 million, $10 million. I would rather waste $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million than to waste $40 million. We can't afford it. Wait till the South Bypass done. See what impact that has on that intersection. I was at the groundbreaking when information technology broke ground for that place, which is now called Fiserv. Helen Basalis was the mayor at that time. She put the spade in the ground. They said there'll never be any major thing on this intersection. That was the commitment we made to information technology at that time. Now somebody's come up with logo toys or someone trying to build some doggone thing that isn't practical. It's a waste of money. Put the thing on hold until we get the South Bypass down and get that thing done, and let's see what impact that has on traffic in South Lincoln. Any questions?
Thank you
And I
very
thank
much.
Richard for his courage to bring this forward.
Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier.
Hi, my name's Bob Bennie, B-E-N-N-I-E.
Great name.
I'm, thank you. Took me a second. Thank you for the, giving me the chance to speak here, giving us the chance to speak here. I'm speaking in support of the amendment to delay the roundabout at Warlick Boulevard. I've been against it since they started the idea of it. It just seemed pretty high price to me when it was only $20 million. And however, I just want to give you a little bit of my experience. My office is at the corner of 16th and Old Cheney. And there's my office on the southeast corner. Design Data is on the southwest corner. On the northwest corner is a Culver's restaurant of that intersection. On the northeast corner is a Quick Shop gas station. I bought my building in 2002, actually made the offer in 2001, paid for it in 2002. So I've been there 17 and a half years. I bought the building. My business is financial planning. We serve several hundred people in Lincoln with retirement planning and investments and that sort of thing. I bought the property so that people could find me easy. I could say I'm at the southeast corner of 16th and Old Cheney. Go to the light, turn south, turn left, you're in my parking lot. Well, I found out just this year that after getting a letter from the appraiser to appraise about potentially or doing an easement and that sort of thing, that they're going to start the elevation for the roundabout over at Warlick east of 16th and Old Cheney. And because of all this, they're going to take out some trees and all that. Well, I like the trees, but you know what? I'm not a tree hugger or anything like that. I'm okay with you taking out the trees. But because of changing the elevation, what they're going to, and starting the roundabout way back there, they're going to make it so that the access to my office park is only from the west. To leave, they have to go east. Currently, people can come to my office park from the north, across Old Cheney, North 16th Street coming south. Most people come from the east, because that's where the population is. They come from the east, driving west on Old Cheney, they get to the light and they turn into our office park and into my parking lot. Or they can come from the west. Now they'll only be, what do you think of that? How handy is that going to be? I mean, my question to you or to the supporters of this roundabout is, does anybody want to buy my property? Would the city like to buy my property? Because you've considerably devalued my property and devalued and screwed up the access to my property by doing this. And nobody came and talked to me as they're planning this, you know, spending this $10 million with the engineers figuring this thing out. Nobody came to me and said, hey, what do you think about if we screw up the access to your property? So, you know, and of course, you know, when you find that out, I found that out in January or February, and of course, I'm only thinking about the impact to me. I'm in this office park association with my neighbor, Design Data, so I spoke to them about it. But then it was just the other day, all of a sudden I realized, what a mess this is going to create for the Culver's restaurant and for the gas and shop, or whatever it's called, the Quick Shop gas station directly north of me. So I'm just, that's about all I have to say.
1 minute. More?
I'm finished. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Is there anyone that wanted to testify in favor of the delay?
Hi.
Welcome.
My name's Mike James. Live at 4810 South 76th. This is a picture of Old Cheney looking east at Warlick. Does that look like a street that needs to be redone? This is what that street looked like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we just redid it. Just 2 years ago. We don't need to be going in and redoing this street again. We just went in and spent millions of dollars fixing it all up. Now we're going to go through and spend $36 million and go through it again. That's not being a good steward of our tax dollars. So I know you guys are, this is a long afternoon for you guys, and want to maybe write things down because the hammers are coming at, you know, us that are opposed to it. Be a good steward of the tax dollars. It's okay to delay this project because this is what it looked like just 2 years ago. And now it's all redone. We've got nice new curbs in here. Here's another view of 14th, Warlick. This is what it looked like 2 years ago. It's all done. It's all nice. 3 of the nicest streets in town right now, 14th Street, Warlick, and Old Cheney. Those are 3 of the nicest streets from one end to the other. We don't need to be working on those streets right now. This is a list that was in the paper. You know, this barely scratches the surface of what we need to work on. This is a street we need to work on, Councilman Bowers. Cornhusker Highway. This is what a street that looks like that needs to be fixed up. This street, no, it can wait. Layton Street, Bowers. Huntington, bus stop, potholes. That street needs to be done now. Elevator roundabout can wait. This is a picture of 14th Street right at the middle of the intersection, Old Cheney. Not a pothole in sight. It doesn't need to be done right now. Here's a picture of O Street. Not to pick on Bowers, but this is 84th Street, just north of O. You know, we're talking about close intersections together, high traffic count. This is a perfect example. We got College Park Road and O Street. They're really close together. That's manageable. Lots of potholes. Some of these potholes, in particular on the south side of O Street, are what I call BRAT potholes. And BRAT, what I stand for, is busted rim and tire. We got busted rim and tire type potholes out there that we need to take care of. 2 years ago, my wife had the terrible phone call to me. 2 passenger tires popped on her car because she hit a pothole. That's why I'm down here today. We need to get our priorities in order. We need to get those streets. We know where the potholes are going to come this spring. We know what streets they're going to come on. They're not going to come on 14th. They're not going to come on Warlick. They're not going to come on Old Cheney because there's no potholes on those streets right now. Those streets have all been resurfaced. They don't look that bad. I thought I was out surveying the streets and I saw this one and it said, you are loved. And I think, well, the street, this sign is obviously not meant for this street.
What intersection was that?
This is Calvert Street. So I'm trying to think of who should I assign. I've been picking on Bowers. I'm going to pick on
me,
Councilman Washington or Councilman Raybold.
Mine. That's why I asked.
This one is Sandra. Sandra knows where that is. It's 24th and Van Dorn. We got some resurfacing there that needs to be done on Van Dorn.
It's your district.
That's
I'm
nice.
a member at large. I represent the entire city.
Okay. Councilman Shob. A Street. Anybody who's ever driven down A Street knows A Street needs to be resurfaced. A Street.
Is that West A or just?
This is A Street. This is about 14th and A.
One
okay?
minute. Sorry, didn't mean to ask questions during your time.
This is another street, another picture of a street that doesn't need to be repaired. This is you can see the sign here. We got the divergent of 14th and Warlick. 17th and A, everybody knows this one. This is one where if you've got your drink in your cup holder, you kind of want to take it out right there because it's going to shake you. I normally do not want to debate Cassidy because he is a phenomenal debater. But one of the things that he said that really stuck out in my head was 40,000 traffic count to 2025, we're going to have 60,000. And I'm going, no. If you look at the traffic counts between 2018, here's 2016, and that's a different slide. This slide is, I'm doing out of order. This slide is for Tammy. Councilwoman Ward. I know Peter Catt talked on this. We talk about LTU has a pattern of over-designing and...
1 minute.
And one of the points I wanted to make was on this particular street, my experience in Antelope Valley, I was pro-Antelope Valley, but we've got a 6-lane road in Antelope Valley right here. And it has a traffic count of 10,000. Where we've got a 2+1 over here on North 14th, which is in Councilwoman Ward's district, 12,000 traffic count. So here we got 20% more on a 2+1 road versus a 6-lane road that was just a 4-lane road. We didn't need to make it into a 6-lane road. Another picture of a street that doesn't need to be done. This is Councilman Ward, 14th Street. We need to get 14th Street done. North 14th, not South 14th. We need to get North 14th done now. South 14th can wait a few years. Okay, the traffic count with LTU Director Cassidy. Here we got traffic count present day, 12,000, 13,000, some of these numbers. you look at 10 years ago, it really hasn't gone up. Let's say 1% a year. And Tom is saying 50%. So that's all. I ran out of time.
All right, thank you very much.
There's
a question for you.
This is my favorite part of the meeting so far. Do you have any more pictures you'd like to show us?
Just a couple left here. A lot of red ink on this. I need to put some more some more toner in my printer because it needed red ink, because there's so many streets that need to be reconstructed now. I tell you right now, Old Cheney's not one of them. 14th Street's not one of them. And Warlick's not one of them. This is a picture of my drink that was sloshing around driving down A Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, you got one of 56th and Van Dorn?
Yeah.
Huh? Do you? I should have brought one of 56th and Van Dorn. I've been calling on that for the last 3 years, asking that be fixed, and nothing has happened.
That's Councilman McGinnis's district.
What? Yes. Okay. I am, Watchdogs is tired of planners and paid staff designing huge projects so that the little people have to suffer with less than usual ways of managing their lives. This idea of paying consultants to come in and tell us stuff is ridiculous. And this grand design, if people are telling us the truth, that there's one or two others in the country, that's ridiculous. We don't need to be on the zenith of everything that goes along that's supposed to be the way life is in the future. The street tax only passed by 500 votes. And part of that was because people were deluded into thinking that was going to pay for most of the street to be taken care of. However, 25% was for new construction, which is down in Lincoln. So at this point, the council has the opportunity to listen to the small taxpayer who wants their streets taken care of, not some grand design that has little or no to do with the majority of people in Lincoln. Now, I realize there are those who are for this, but let's keep in mind that it doesn't fit for the most of the people in Lincoln, and we need to be more efficient about the money that we have and pay attention to what people wanted when the vote came up for the added tax. I was disappointed that was happening because it sent the message that whatever we can put before some people in Lincoln, they will give us, so we don't have to be efficient with the money that we have. It's time for this council to start listening to what we have that needs attention and not ask people to spend money on something that is out of the realm of the way people in the Midwest think. They think that this is conservative, that this is where we should be careful with the money that we have available to us, and that we should take care of our own first and not come through with some big designs that you've had before you today on many of these resolutions. So we ask you to consider Mr. McGinnis's idea and support him so that we don't have what has been brought to you before.
1 minute.
And so all what watchdogs can do is to reinforce what they have been saying. And keep in mind, 56th and Van Dorn needs to be attended to.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Next testifier.
Mike Obst. Basically, I am the I am the office park manager on behalf of Design Data, and I also manage the Design Data office park. We also would like to see a delay in this. Our biggest concern, like with Bob was talking about, is access to the office park, which is 3 different lots off of Old Cheney. And something that Bob might not have got too deep into is, being the facilities or the office park manager, I have a concern on the roadway that goes along there, where it's access to the 3 lots, but it's really treated like a public road and gets a lot of traffic. That's our shared expenses, and we're concerned over the next few years too of what's going to happen to that roadway. So that's really my two cents on the topic. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wanted to testify in favor of the delay? All right. Yes, please come forward.
Hi, my name's Fanshawn, and I go to Christ Place Church 20 years now, so that is the intersection I travel twice a week. I see no problem of my family going there at that intersection. I've lived in big cities like San Diego, Phoenix, and Chicago, and I have never once seen a double-decker roundabout. To me, it's ridiculous, and I think that money from, like Mr. McGinnis suggested, to go and fix these lousy city streets that we have. I, like I said, have lived lots of places, and I am sick and tired of dodging potholes in this city. And I'm tired of the city council not listening to us who pay the taxes here. And you guys, the administration in the past, have been huge spenders. And I'm tired of it, and a lot of my friends are tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you for testifying. Anyone else that would like to testify in favor of the delay? All right, may we start the process of those who would like to testify against the delay of this project? Please come forward.
Just one moment. Did the last person, did you sign in?
No.
I didn't catch your name, and okay, but I couldn't. Would you please sign in so we could keep a record of that?
On the pink sheets, any
Pink
one of the
sheets,
pink
yeah.
sheets.
Right here.
Yep, and we can have, Fanshawn is signing in. Could we have the testifiers that would like to testify against a delay? Please go ahead.
Yes, hello. My name is Keenan Ledger. I am a resident at 1101 Clearview Boulevard. I've appreciated everything that I've heard. It seems to me that even those that are opposed to the immediate construction, many of those people also realize that there is a problem there. The enemy of good is perfect. But at that same token, as responsible controllers of finance, I think it's important that we don't do half measures, things like cul-de-sacs that will be a temporary fix to a long-term problem. There in Southwest Lincoln, there's plenty of growth has been discussed. A long-term solution, I believe, is an important thing. There's been mentioned that there's already projected deficits, which means that when talking about this roundabout comes around in another 4 or 5 years, we're going to be dealing with that. Roads have been a problem in Lincoln since there's been roads in Lincoln. We just approved as in the city the quarter-cent tax to handle those issues. To the second speaker that mentioned the fire truck access, as a young father of two girls, access by police and fire is safe. I believe that there will be access directly to the west of Christ Place off of Warlick, which in my estimations is just a short extension to that path. In the intersections that we are discussing, there's been over 250 accidents, 50 injury accidents, and 3 deaths. It's not a nothing burger. People have mentioned that we need to be thoughtful with that planning. This project has been talked about and discussed for many years with, I believe, between $6 and $7 million spent. My concern is that if we continue to delay this, those surveys and other things that happen will only need to be repeated, essentially throwing away the money already spent, which taxes are high enough, we don't need to waste money. To the gentleman with the picks, it was very interesting, but I believe we would be able to keep much of the cement on the bottom T section, essentially adding the elevation and roundabout, so we would be able to keep some of that pretty cement. And last thing that I would like to note is they're heading westbound west of 14th and Old Cheney. There's a lot of traffic, and the lanes change from 1 to 2. I live really close to that. I can tell you every day there is horns and angry drivers. Right now we have about 100 foot of rubber on the cement from what appears to be a tractor trailer that locked up tires, as probably to avoid an accident there on Clearview. It's either that or a dually peeled out for 100 feet, and I don't believe that to be the case. My neighbor directly to the east, I've been in my home for 3 years. He has had at minimum 3 that I've seen, possibly more, vehicles that went into his yard, including a cement company truck that has went through his fence. As a father of 1, soon to be 2 little girls, I find it a responsibility of mine to talk about the safety of my family. I don't want to feel unsafe sending my girls out into the backyard to play, knowing that there is a problem there. I guess to close, people have mentioned that there's only 2 other roundabouts and that we don't need to be pioneers. That's fine, but we have a solution to a problem. We have funds allocated and plans approved. I say we go forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier.
Hi, my name's Joni Mueller, and I live on Old Cheney. And I'm here for myself. I'm a stakeholder. I've worked on this project from conception. I've lived in Lincoln for 22 years. I've worked basically on every project trying to get something going. And yes, we did try something that was not a roundabout with Terry Werner when he was here, just to do something so it was not all roundabouts like somebody had said. And that did not even help. So we've tried all kinds of things. It's just been pushed down the road, kick the can down the road every time. And now we're at a point that the traffic is so bad that there's nothing that we can do. It's unbearable at times. I mean, I can't even get on my driveway, and there's so many accidents. I went house to house last weekend talking to people, knocking on doors, and 3 people that I talked to had their cars totaled in intersections right up there where the 7 intersections are. And I'm like, really, you need to contact these council people and let them know that this kind of stuff is happening. Just like that person that got killed right there on that motorcycle, that didn't need to happen. And I'm sorry about that person on 16th and Old Cheney that's going to have that problem. But there was people that got killed there also, not that long ago, right by that gas station. So we are having those kind of problems right there that people just don't know about. We have all those traffic conflicts. We need safety. With that roundabout that was worked on, we took our time. It was not something that happened just suddenly, you know. I call it an oval about. It's not a teeny tiny little thing like up on Superior. It's huge, and it will be very flowable. People will not stop and run into the rear end of you. It will flow very easily if anybody looked on the website. Also, to debunk the thing about the Warlick at 14th where it's all done and why tear it up again? That was a state job, okay? They did that. The state did that on 55W. The city did not pay for that, just to let you know that. Let's see. There's 7 intersections and 7.1 miles of roadway that's going to be done there. And it's just not going to be the roadway. It's going to also include bicycles, bicycle paths that are going to go under there. It's going to be pedestrian paths. So it's just not cars that are all going to be involved in this. The whole city is going to be involved in it, the community. So I think that this should be done for the safety, the flow. The South Beltway will not have anything to do with that intersection. It is way too far south. It's not going to have anything to do with it. 77 isn't going to have anything to do with it. I know, I live in that area. There's still going to be conflict with both of them going. There always will be. But the only way to get it better is to build that roundabout. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for testifying. Next testifier, Mr. Wildman.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the council. I'm Todd Wilchin, and with me I have Bruce Boyer. And we are here appearing before you on behalf of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. Our organization wishes to voice its opposition to delaying improvements to the 14th and Old Cheney Warlick Boulevard intersections. The Lincoln Chamber has consistently advocated for making necessary improvements at these intersections. In fact, we recently had the opportunity to discuss them at our October Growth and Development Forum. The challenges associated with this area have a long and somewhat dubious history in our city. Since the 1990s, the city has made 3 prior attempts to reconfigure these intersections, hiring multiple engineering firms to study the traffic and create designs for much needed improvements. All 3 attempts were unsuccessful due to either public concerns of taking too much land or other engineering considerations. In 2012, the city initiated the current improvement project by engaging the community with the design competition process to overcome these barriers realized during the prior attempts that divided project stakeholders against one another. In total, there were 8 proposals representing 20 firms during the competition. Many of us were present during the public open house where the 3 final design concepts were introduced at Lincoln Southwest High School. Community input significantly influenced the proposed improvements. The current design addresses the priorities outlined by project area stakeholders, including the enhancement of safety and reducing peak hour traffic congestion. 14th and Old Cheney is one of the busiest intersections in Lincoln, handling nearly 38,000 cars per day. By 2045, that number will increase to almost 60,000. It also eliminates the awkward 14th Street and Warlick Boulevard crossover. It minimizes private land taken for the project, and it reduces traffic on Old Cheney west of Warlick Boulevard to bring back its residential character. It's important to note the improvement project also includes the reconstruction and reconfiguration of 7 intersections and 7.3 lane miles of roadway reconstruction. We've also had numerous conversations with the adjourning commercial property owners since the introduction of this resolution. The feedback we've received has been consistent. This area has been thoroughly studied. The proposed improvements will move the community beyond incremental improvements to a long-term solution. The uncertainty caused by delaying these improvements would be disruptive and hinder economic development in the area, and the delay would also prolong the safety risks posed to the individuals who utilize these intersections during their daily commutes to work and en route to school. For these reasons, we simply cannot support the project any longer. Thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions.
Can I add
Mr.
something
Bowe?
as well?
Yes, certainly.
I just want to add that, part of the reason we did Growth and Development Forum and invited the engineering firms that are involved in this project is to get to the question, a factual discussion about the interplay between the South Beltway and this intersection or a number of intersections, because I think some people even today still bring that issue up. What I heard from the interim director, Cassidy, today was there's very little interplay with this project. That's the same thing that we heard from the engineering firms just last week. So I don't know if that issue is put to bed or not, but as Todd had mentioned in his testimony too, one of the things that is at work here for us is we've got some very large employers out at this intersection. Hopefully they're going to add employment, and that's going to increase that traffic count. I know that there's an open piece of ground just to the south of Design Data that's for sale. There's also one back on the other side of Old Cheney as you go a little bit further to the north. It's only going to get worse, and I know it's an alluring argument to say, let's just wait, let's do this another time. But the way I think about this project, and I think a lot of people around in that area that are impacted by this probably feel about it, is we've waited a long time already. We've studied this, we've looked at it, we've tried to design something that is going to build or going to find consensus in the community. A project like this is never going to be you're not going to get 100% support. And we won't get, if we delayed it, we wouldn't get 100% support in 5 years either. And it's going to be very difficult to find funding as well. So for those reasons, we are supportive of moving forward, and though we respect Councilman McGinnis for coming forward with this and having this public discussion, we would respectfully request that you just continue to have the project in line and move forward with it and vote against the delay.
Any questions for Mr. Bohr? All right, thank you very much. Thank you both for testifying.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
First of all, I'm here tonight, or today, whatever it is at this point, to thank all of you. I sent emails to all of you. I got people you guys called me. Really, you gave me all the time in the world. Same with you, Jane. I was had to go into surgery or have my lungs looked at. I think I was speaking with you, wasn't I? So I just think it made me feel good that we have a council that is concerned about the public and to reach that much far out. You know, for me, it's about ethics.
Mr. Ahrens, could you identify yourself, please?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Paul Arndt, 940 Old Cheney Road. I moved there in 1972. I think I may have a lot of knowledge about the area. But when I look at this, we've been 25 years working on this project, doing things, trying things. Councils that have committed to it. It's your job to follow through. If we say we're going to do it, do it. That's not what I'm hearing, okay? So why do the delay when you just let it go to bid? I think you feel very strongly it's going to be way up there. Solves the problem, okay? Then you guys got to decide where the money's going to come from, if it can come from there or not. But not by delaying this project and not letting go to bid shows that our community doesn't stand behind their word. And all of you have to keep that in your mind. You know, I've heard an incredible amount of talk about money, all this kind of stuff. I don't need to get involved anymore, but some of you are right, some of you are way wrong. I've heard numbers. When I started on Sunday writing my email, I think you all got, I said 6,000 cards. Well, that number's risen to 38,000. That's who we need to be thinking about. Those 38,000 cars a day to drive through that. Now, why do I worry about that? Because I've had 3 family members have accidents that year in that area over the last 25 years. So this isn't something new. So I think we have to keep in mind safety. I didn't hear much talk about safety. As a matter of fact, I heard very little about caring about that 38,000 cars. For some of these folks that say the traffic's not that bad, you know, if they want to come spend an afternoon with me sitting in the driveway at 4 o'clock, they want to have somebody flip you off when you turn into your driveway, come on by and you can get it on a regular basis. But I think this decision's got to be made on safety and consideration for those 38,000 cars that have kids coming from the YMCA, from the baseball park. So I'll just finish. You want to start, if this doesn't go through and you haven't done, you don't have the money to do it, put speed bumps on Old Cheney and make people go the way they should have been. 77 to Warlick, okay? So it can, some of it, that does not, the congestion on 14th, I got no answer. It just needs to be done. But in the beginning, I did not like the roundabout. I actually went on and played on it, okay? And realized, yeah, I think this son of a gun can really work. So I'm against, I think we should let it go to bid and then make your decisions from there. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming down. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item? All right. Yes. All right.
Gotta get a new sheet here. My name is Kurt Donaldson. And I live at 2860 R Street. I'm the immediate past president of the Hartley Neighborhood Association. And one interesting thing today is about the dog that didn't bark. You don't see Russ Miller in here today, or a lot of typical neighborhood types saying, yes, we could use another $16 million for our potholes. I think we're very pleased with what the voters did, and we're looking forward to pothole reconstruction on the existing streets and hope that most of the money goes that way. But I'm here very unusually today to associate myself with the Chamber of Commerce on this issue, as opposed to LIBA or the home builders or the Board of Realtors, and to urge you to make the tough decision here, where I was on a council once where we took the easy way. In the 1990s, we had a lot of new sales tax money coming in from North 27th Street, and the mayor came in and proposed to the council that we cut the hell out of the sales tax rates. It would be a very popular item, and it was very popular. He ran unopposed for mayor. I ran unopposed for re-election to the city council. It was very sweet. But that is part of the genesis of our pothole problem in Lincoln today. What I urge you to do is to maintain one of our competitive strengths in Lincoln, and that is very simply travel time for commuters. We have had historically one of the lowest travel times for commuters in the entire United States, and this project is a very important component in maintaining those low travel times. As far as the Beltway has been an object of religious veneration for 20 years by my friends in Liba and others. And I'm here to tell you today, it's my opinion, that people will not be as happy with it when it's built as they are the vision of it, because it is very far south, and 90% of our traffic on Highway 2 is local traffic, and that traffic will continue. People will not go south to go east and west and go north. I think it's going to take some trucks off, but it is not the be-all and end-all. I think this intersection, for the short run, 10 to 15 years in Lincoln, is probably more important for our quality of life. But I'd also like to talk, as I became a member of the City Council, I had to become an intelligent consumer of engineering advice. My record before that is unparalleled in opposing large traffic projects. I looked around the room, there's nobody that's opposed as many large projects as I have. The Northeast Radial, street widenings, and Joe Hampton himself, twice for mayor. He defeated him because he was all about streets, my friend Joe Hampton. But my understanding that I came to have on the City Council is the importance of intersections. If you have two fine arterials intersecting and you simply control it with traffic lights, you will cut the combined capacity of those arterials by more than 50%. You're just throwing away capacity if you have traffic lights. That is the major advantage of cloverleaf interchanges and roundabouts for a lesser budget, is to get back more seconds in the minute to move traffic. It is just extremely important. So,
1 minute.
I think I've said everything I had to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much for testifying. Appreciate it. Be sure and sign in.
My name is Mary Barton, and I'm in Mr. McGinnis's district, but I live closer to Jane's, actually, and I'm this older sister of Paul Arndt. I am one of the family members who has had an accident there, and in addition to that, a number of years ago, while there was still parking on Old Cheney, I was parked behind my brother's Suburban, and I had a much smaller car, and somebody came down that hill really fast, and the front end of my car went under. So at 2:30 in the morning, my sister-in-law is waking me to tell me that the police are there and I should come out. This has been an issue for a long time. Those of you who saw the television coverage of Paul's family, we're very frightened for the children in the family to even be in the front yard. You just don't know what's going to happen there. Pulling out from there is very, very difficult. I live 2 miles away. I use that intersection frequently to go downtown, or those intersections to go downtown. I volunteer down in the industrial park area and often go through those intersections. I don't think the South Beltway will have any impact on that area. I don't see how the construction of it is going to impact it. I just don't see that's going to do it. 77 only increased the traffic because people started using Old Cheney, which at that point is a residential street, should have remained a residential street, but has become this through street that has caused a lot of the problems down there. I think that there has been a lot of work, and I have been to some of the hearings about this. I think we should at least go forward and see what the bids are. In the present climate, it is quite possible that it's going to go way over bid. We understand that. But putting it off does not accomplish anything as far as I'm concerned. And I believe that you should vote down the suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Seeing none, I see someone. Come on down.
Yes, and I haven't signed this yet. I'll try and do that here.
You can sign it after you're done.
Okay, I will. My name is Gwen Meister, and I and my husband, William Beamer, have lived at 5620 Hunts Drive for more than 20 years now. And when we first moved there, indeed, it was really, there was an awful lot of less traffic than there is now. And my husband is in the hospital now, or he would have been talking to you tonight, because he has been one of the neighborhood organizations, the Salt Valley View Neighborhood Association's representatives, working on this particular proposal. He's been through all of the various and sundry open houses and meetings and so forth as a representative of our neighborhood association. And now, to tell you the truth, getting just out of our small street, which has no other outlet but to go on Old Cheney, right there just before the railroad tracks, it's really worth your life sometimes to be able to get in or out of that particular dead-end street that we live on. And also we walk in that neighborhood, we bicycle in that neighborhood. We've done that for 20 years, but it's beginning to get to a case where even we as adults are worried about the traffic and the dangers that are happening. We've seen a lot of those accidents that have happened. One of the things I think people didn't bring up at all is that there are all of those highway speeds that are coming into that area. Right across the tracks, it's until you get to the tracks, it's 50 miles per hour coming towards Old Cheney, and you only slow down because there is a bicycle path there, and right away it says 35 miles an hour, but it's been 50 all the way from Highway 77, and that's part of the reason why this particular project is so complicated, is because of those speeds. And one of the other people who commented said, well, having people slow down, and those lights have helped a little bit in terms of the accidents, but they're not going to help if there's going to be 60,000 traffic count soon. And believe me, my husband has spent hours and hours and hours being a representative to this, and we too think that at least we should give it a chance, because I don't see how pushing it back and delaying it is going to it certainly isn't going to make it any cheaper, even though you said, well, that's not a reason for it, but it's certainly not going to be cheaper, and it's certainly not going to be easier to do in however many years it is. So I just wanted to say this. I don't like to do public speaking. My husband does, but since he's in the hospital, I had to do it. So thank you, and I appreciate all of you. I did send out some emails to you as well about this. So. Thank you again.
Very much. We hope your husband recovers too.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this matter? Going once, going twice. All right, we'll have some rebuttal.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, rebuttal is reserved for the proponents of legislation and the introducer, not opponents.
Thank you very much.
Staff questions are reserved for the voting session.
I appreciate that. Since I'm the chair, I made it very clear in the beginning how this process was going to go down, and at that time I would like staff to come up for any Any items they would like to clarify
Point of
from
order,
the
I'd like to
public?
appeal the ruling of the chair.
All right. Is there a second to appeal the ruling of the chair? When I made it very clear in the beginning. Is there any second to that motion?
I'll second that for discussion.
Second that for discussion.
I would discuss this and say, just because you made it clear, the chair is not the dictator of the council. The chair is to uphold the rules and the policies of the council as put forth in Robert's Rules of Order. And this procedure that you say you made clear runs roughshod over Robert's rules and the rules of the council.
I have questions that I would like to get answered. I have some questions for Director Cassidy, and since we're doing a public hearing, I would like to get some of those questions answered.
Those questions
Mr.
are usually
Kirkpatrick?
reserved for the voting session. That's the way we've done it in the past.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. In defense of this, I made very clear in our directors meeting how the process was going to be handled. I made it very clear at the beginning of this so that everyone who came and spent their time testifying would understand how the process would go. And I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney, Mr. Kirkpatrick, if you would like to weigh in on the ruling of the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to ask you to do that.
Okay, good deal.
We have a motion and a second. Where do we go from here?
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. So I think the objection that was raised by the council member was well-founded. I think he understands the rules of the council. I would also agree that the chair did make her expectation of the hearing clear to everyone at the beginning of the hearing, and included among that was the expectation that certain questions that were raised during the hearing would be answered, or at least there would be an attempt to answer that. And so, as we've discussed before, the chair has made their ruling. I think it's the body that thereby determines how this proceeds. The motion was made to object to the ruling of the chair. If there is a majority that votes for that motion, then the chair is overruled, and there will be no time allotted for members of staff to come up and answer staff questions. If the motion that was made by Councilman Christensen fails, then the chair can proceed and allow questions to be answered by the staff. Were there any further questions? That's where we're at.
We can discuss this, right?
Yes, you may. This is a
okay.
debatable motion.
My question for Councilman Christensen is, Councilwoman Raybould brought this up, said it multiple times. People came up and asked questions. If you had this concern, I wish it would have been addressed sooner, and I wonder about the timing.
Well, the timing is such that during this meeting, I was looking up Robert's Rules of Order to make sure my position was correct, and it is. And so the normal procedure for City Council is to take staff questions during the voting session before we vote. So my question then is, if we're going to take staff questions today, will we also take staff questions on the 4th of November? Or are we going to limit it to now and not then? Or are we going to say, let's stick with the tradition of the council and do it then?
Yeah, you should.
Yes,
Madam Chair?
please, go ahead.
I'll probably, go ahead and allow questions to our staff here. One thing I didn't hear you say before was that we were going to have a lot of chance to discuss and have questions for him prior to this. So I was kind of left out on the cold at the beginning of this whole, because I didn't know we were going to have a whole list of questions available for staff at that time. But afterwards, I was under the whole impression that we will be asking questions afterwards. And I'd also like to be able to ask questions of staff at the voting session.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would agree with Councilman McGinnis. I would like the opportunity for staff to come back up today, and I would also like that opportunity before we vote at the public hearing, just for the record.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to support staff questions right now, and primarily because there were members of the public who did ask questions, and they were told that they would get those questions answered today to the best of the ability of the staff. So I'd like that to proceed. This is a very complicated issue. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I would like to reserve the right to ask questions of the staff tonight and before voting. And though I can appreciate that Robert's Rules is Robert's Rules. I think that we can waive Robert's Rules tonight in order to have a full conversation about this project. We're being asked to make a decision which has huge impacts.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
That's all been said.
Okay, let's take a vote. A vote in favor would prohibit any further questioning of staff. A vote against would allow us to ask questions of staff.
And just to reiterate one other thing, according to Robert's rules, the gavel is passed to the vice chair during this vote.
Since it's a vote to overrule
Because it's a
the chair.
vote to overrule the chair.
And that's what this is, a vote to overrule the chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Washington?
Against.
Wait,
Hang
hang
on.
on.
No.
That would be no.
No.
Bowers?
No.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
No.
Raybold?
No.
That's me.
Joe?
I'm up next. No.
Ward?
No.
Motion lost, 1-6.
Let the record show I'm passing the gavel back to Chairwoman
Okay,
Raybold.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. I know it, let's see. One of our first testifiers had some questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Will this just be answering questions, or will,
If you,
Director Castile, should he make a statement? What are the rules for this part of the program?
well, the idea was that people could ask staff questions and
We did have
that
a
they
few
could answer
testifiers.
questions that were raised by several of the participants.
Go.
Would you like me to address the
Can
ones
he
that I
go,
have
or
in my
does he
notes?
need to be wait for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
proper
no,
questions?
Why don't you
I'm
go with
hoping
the
that,
questions
I
we
wrote a
got?
few down, but I can't read my handwriting.
Okay, well, some of these were questions with a question mark at the end, and some were statements. Would you like me to just deal with the ones that were question marks? Very good.
Sounds good. It's a good start. Thank you.
One of the testifiers, I think it was Mr. Lose, talked about the drainage ditch and whether water would still go over the road. I do know that part of this project is also watershed improvements along Old Cheney and along Warlick. So water, sanitary and storm sewer is included in the project in an effort to alleviate some of the water over the road that has occurred at those locations. There was a question by Mr. Miller about how many roundabouts are involved in this. I count a total of 3 roundabouts. One of those is at the new access road from Warlick Boulevard that runs to Old Cheney along the west side of Christ Place Church. The other one is the 14th Street roundabout itself, and the third one is a small roundabout at the access road on South 14th Street, south of Old Cheney, that serves Fiserv and the Design Data campus. Those are the only question mark questions that I had in my notes.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I believe that I think that Mr. Lewis also asked, what does it include besides the drainage ditch? He wanted to know, what does the $36 million include?
And again, it includes the street construction at those, the intersection improvements at those 7 locations, 3 new roundabouts, the watershed work, sanitary and storm sewers, relocation of utilities, design and construction costs, and that's essentially it.
Does it include part of the right-of-way acquisition?
Yes. Did I not say right-of-way acquisition? I meant to.
I did not hear that, but thank you.
I missed that. It includes right-of-way acquisition.
Okay, thank you. James?
I got really concerned when the statement was made about 33rd and Cornhusker costing $90 million, so I did some research. Apparently, the city's only going to be chipping in $1.3 million into 33rd and Cornhusker. None of it's finalized, but it looks like 50% of it's going to be coming from the RTSD, and the rest of it coming from state, federal, and railroad grants. So just to be clear, the city's not investing $90 million into 33rd and Cornhusker, based on the research that I did. I did have a couple of questions. Mr. Luce also brought up the concern about getting a fire truck to a person's residence. I don't know if you had any information on that. I don't mean to spring that on you, but is there any concern about first responders being able to access these properties in an appropriate amount of time?
Well, I don't think there's concerns about accessing the properties. I'd have to do a little bit of work to see what the travel times are from the nearest fire stations. I have a feeling that those travel times are at the edge of our desired 4-minute travel time now. I think they will be better with this project. However, that's just an opinion based on my feeling that the roadway congestion will be less, and that fire response, which comes primarily from the east, will be able to navigate that intersection better. But it would really take a little bit of study. We're not increasing the road miles very much to get into the South Salt Creek neighborhood, and I think it'll be offset, maybe then some, by the lessened congestion. But that's just an educated guess.
Okay. I have another question, if that's okay. One of the things that we heard a lot about is the concern about how our roads are maintained and the current state of our roads. This is a little bit more of a detailed question that I don't know if you'll have the answer to right now, but I'm wondering if there's any research that's already been done or any information that's already been done that says, how do our roads compare to comparable cities? Are our roads really as disastrous compared to other cities in our size? I'd be interested to see if there's any numbers on that.
I don't know. I have an opinion about that, but I don't have anything to back it up other than the anecdotal evidence of driving in other cities and seeing other roadways around the country.
Okay. I just didn't know if there's a report that had already been made prior. Or
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Well, I can answer that.
Okay.
And I can tell my joke, but I know everybody's heard the joke. But the city of Omaha, typically they've been spending $39 million, and now it's been creeping up to $45 million and $54 million. Historically, the city of Lincoln has spent roughly anywhere 55, 60, and now this year in the budget it's $65 million on our roads. Does anybody want to hear the joke? All right, real quick. So the joke comparing to I know nobody said yes, but I'm the chair, so it'll just lighten it up a little bit. So you know how in England and Ireland they drive on the left side of the road? Well, in Omaha they drive on what's left of the road. Thank you for the groans. Okay.
We'll be here all evening.
So
I hate to follow it.
Now, if anybody has a more serious question than
I just got
very
some
bad joke. So.
Some basic questions. Sure. You talk about water and sanitary sewer. Are those being paid from the departments, or are they being paid from this road money that we're using?
Well, they're part of the overall budget for the project. I really can't tell you without doing a little work, Mr. McGinnis, whether they are included in the money that's in the capital improvement project now, which is $36,450,000, but I believe they are.
Okay, so they're being
I can clarify that.
Right now, we believe they're being paid with the wheel tax money and the city money.
I think they
road
come.
Money.
I think they're part of the roadway construction project. I will clarify that, though.
Then, do we have any numbers on the other utilities that are being asked to relocate utilities in the area?
I do not. I know that the city has spent about $6 million total, not on studying the problem, but on all of the costs. Probably the largest single amount of that has been for the engineering work. But some of it has been for right-of-way acquisition. Some of it has probably been for appraisals. Some of that would be for relocating city utilities. The city generally does not pay for the relocation of private utilities, and I'm certain there's some of that has occurred as well, but that would not have been a city expense. It's included in the money that's already been spent.
Okay. One other quick question that came up during the testimony. Someone said that they were approached by somebody and offered them $100 to talk to them, and they identified themselves as from the city. Do you know anything about that?
No, that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, that was my question as well, Director. The gentleman testified in favor of the delay. He was a neighbor and a business owner. I don't see him any longer, but they came to the door as a city employee, and maybe he's still here, and was offered $100 for his time to talk about the project. So I'm just wondering, maybe at some point if we could get more information about that, if someone on your staff may know something about that. I think it's just curiosity on my part too, how that, or maybe he misunderstood, I don't know. But it gave me some pause, so I was curious as well, as Councilman McGinnis.
I was going to say that it was Midwest Right-of-Way was the company he mentioned, and he might have been confused about something, but he wasn't confused about the fact they gave him $100.
I never heard him say that he took it, but I did hear him say that it was offered, and I too wondered what was going on there.
Just to talk to you.
I don't know if this is standard practice when a right-of-way company engages someone. I know that we sometimes, pay earnest money when we're making offers on land, but I know nothing about this.
I don't know if I heard this question or not. Oh, yeah, welcome.
Oh, Michelle does.
Michelle Backemeyer, Urban Development Department. We hired a consultant to help with the right-of-way acquisition. So Midwest Right-of-Way is the company that we hired. I did find out he, I think, is a tenant in the strip mall right there at 14th and Old Cheney. The bicycle shop, I think, is who he is. He has a real minimal interest because he's on the far end of the strip where it's not really affected. So the $100 is just his interest as a tenant in the project. So,
I'm sorry, I'm not following this completely. Are you suggesting that he was offered $100 to talk?
no, to sign a tenant release.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Property owner release? Are those?
I heard questions, how many times have we voted to approve this project already, the city council?
I believe it's been in the capital improvement project for about 6 years. So the capital improvement project, of course, is approved by the council during the budget process every year.
How about this design? When did it go into the CIP?
Probably 2012 or 2013.
Yeah, I don't believe there has ever been a different design in the CIP, Councilman. I'd have to go back to those CIPs to see if the nature of the design was specifically mentioned. And I believe the design competition was in 2013. So it may have been in the CIP before the design was selected. Again, that would be relatively easy for us to determine.
And then I also heard some skepticism about the engineers doing the traffic count that may be benefiting from this project. What engineering firm did the traffic count, or is it internal traffic count projections, or?
I must have missed that testimony. I think we do our own traffic counting with our own devices. So the traffic counts that you see, and I think it was Mr. James, who has the good fortune to find photos of that intersection at times I never see, mentioned that the traffic counts there, and we use our own devices to do that. And that image that he showed, that map, is straight from the city's website of the traffic counts for each leg of arterial streets in Lincoln. They're not done every year at every intersection, so you'll see a date beside those traffic counts. Some of them will be, for instance, 2014 or 2018, 2015, but that's what those counts are.
Sandra?
Yes. Director Cassidy, I have a question about the bid process and what would happen afterwards. So if the project were to go to bid and come back significantly higher than 36 million or whatever the real number is, 34.5 or whatever it is, what would be the response?
Well, essentially, this is true on any project that the city is engaged in. We do our best to project what it's going to cost to do the project. That's the number that goes in the capital improvement program. If a project goes out for bid and it comes back significantly more than the amount of money that's in the CIP, then you really have three options. You go back to the decision makers, the elected officials, and tell them you need more money, and try to suggest some ways of funding that excess so that the project can go forward. That's one way to do it. The next way you do it is value engineering. You look at the project and see where are things that could be changed or modified that would reduce costs. And that may be design, that may be construction materials, that may be amenities that would be included in the project. And your third option is you don't do the project. You just decide that the cost is too expensive and the project does not go forward. Those are really the three ways that you have of dealing with construction bids that are well in excess of what you have budgeted.
Might I add a follow-up before you? Right. So if value engineering is an option going forward, say if it comes in at $45 million, do you have the right to value engineer? How much leeway do you have to redesign? I mean, could you then say, well, the design as it was crafted out is what, maybe it's the elevated roundabout is what makes it so much more expensive. Would you then have that opportunity at that point to redesign it so that maybe it was a different design as long as project goals were met?
Yeah, well, that's basically what value engineering is about. It's about looking at the design and deciding how can this be changed or modified in a way that saves money.
Okay.
A project of this scope, I'm sure there are a lot of different options that could be on the table for discussion. At some point, the value engineering that you might do becomes so significant that you've fundamentally changed the project. And in some cases, you've changed it so much that it's no longer, doesn't have the functionality that you desire. And my experience has been that if that is the case, then you're probably better off not to do the project.
Okay, thank you very much.
My question is very similar. How come we haven't already done the value engineering?
We have.
So this project does represent the value engineering?
Well, it represents a lot of changes to the design that won the competition to try to bring it into a more reasonable cost. Is there more that could be done? Yeah, there probably is. There are probably things that could be done that would reduce the cost even further, but I would suggest that at this point, those will probably result in some degradation of the project itself. Nonetheless, they're worth considering when you're faced with bids that are in excess of the amount of money you have available.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Don't worry, you can still ask questions.
My question, I get another bite at the apple.
Get another bite at the apple? Thank you very much. And there has been a request to delay the vote on this until November 4th. So I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I would like to move that we delay the vote on this until November 4th without any more public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, introduced by McGinnis, seconded by James Michael Bowers. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Yes, and it has been a request by the City Council that we take a 7-minute recess. Because that'll bring us back here at 5:45.
Yeah.
Is that enough time?
That's fine.
That's, okay, we'll be back 5:45. Okay. All right. Could everyone please take their seats?
Listen, Penny, I see you in the audience talking with you.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. And we will continue where we left off on the next item.
All right, we'll call item 6J, amending section 9.36.110 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to firearms in unattended motor vehicle, unlawful to prohibit the storage of unsecured firearms in unattended motor vehicles, and repealing section 9.36.110 as hitherto existing. Does anyone wish to come forward on this item?
And we'll take a testimony, those in favor first.
Okay, I'll
of
volunteer.
this ordinance, and I'm sorry, I should have asked Councilman McGinnis to talk about your ordinance, but Mr. Christensen, Councilman Christensen, do you
I'm
want to?
okay. I'm here to listen to what the public has to say tonight.
Wonderful, thank you all.
Sorry about that. For the record, anybody wants to talk to me about anything for $100, I'll talk to them.
Me too.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
The problem with me sitting there is I start scratching more and more notes and I can't read them. And it's kind of eclectic, and my daughter accuses me of having a vast wealth of eclectic information. And I try to tell her its whole stories, but I just lose parts of it. Anyway, I am for striking the part on the 24-hour period. Can you tell us who you were? Jim Vaughn. I may not have. I wrote it down just in case. But I'm for striking the part on the 24 hours because that's an arbitrary type thing. I don't know what the probability of somebody breaking in at 24 or a year later or whatever. I like to think I'm a responsible gun owner. I have been around guns my whole life, but I would like to be the person to be able to dictate how and when I take care of them. And I think there's only one time that I ever remember accidentally leaving my gun in my car, and that's because I go to my cabin in Colorado, and a lot of times I'll take 5, 6, 7 guns, and I put them in different bags. But the storage part, I have a little bit of a concern with. Long guns, I don't know how that's going to affect keeping long guns in a car. Trying to find a hard container to keep them in is going to be real expensive, $200, $300, $400. In the past, mostly I've done is hide them. I don't leave my guns overnight in the car, like I said, except for the one exception. However, when I do come back from hunting, a lot of times, when I'm deer hunting, I'll come in during the middle of the day. I don't like parading them back and forth with my vehicle to the house. So because I just don't like people to see me carrying guns back and forth, so I do leave my truck, and I have a real expensive Viper system, which sounds like half the vehicles in Europe, emergency vehicles. But I would like to see if we're going to have to lock them up and keep them secure that way. I'd like to see cable locks added, because if you secure them to, say, the car seat or such, or some other place in there, there would be a good chance that somebody wouldn't be able to get them. There's no system you're going to be able to have that would totally make anything safe. You know, there's always somebody can defeat it if they know it's there ahead of time. But like the ordinance states, most of it's done by juveniles. Most juveniles aren't equipped to come in and break in something like that. But I believe there was a penalty stated with this, or am I thinking of some other bill? It's a $500 penalty in 6 months or something like that. I would think that you'd want to have something of a smaller penalty for the first time offender, and then maybe the second time raise the penalty on that to whatever you have there. But I think that's about all my eclectic information. Other than the fact that a lot of times I'll use what they call a gun magnet. It's a rare earth magnet. They're really, really strong. So I can, in a handgun, that way I can hide it in places nobody's going to find it. And that works better than lock them in a glove box or some other place that somebody can find. They're not secured as far as you can pull them off. They're hard to pull off, but I can find places on the vehicle nobody's going to find one. But anyway, that's it. $100.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. Next testifier.
Hello, Emily Killo, Nebraskans Against Gun Violence, and my address is 6400 Granite Ridge Road. I'm here today to testify in favor of the ordinance for responsible storage of firearms in vehicles, having spent a good portion of my time in the last couple of years heavily invested in studying the data with regard to the increase in responsible firearm storage and its corresponding decrease in firearm violence. This is an important first step for the city of Lincoln in terms of codifying and normalizing responsible gun ownership. The majority of gun owners I know want to be responsible, and most follow the law even when it's inconvenient. And so while there may be some new routines to learn and adapt to, change is sometimes necessary in the interest of public safety. During my service on the Mayor's Task Force for Preventing Child Access to Firearms, we studied a great deal of local data, and we know that gun theft from cars is a major access point for juveniles in the city of Lincoln. 1 in 6 gun thefts in Lincoln come from cars, and 1 in 2 of those end up in the hands of juveniles. This is important policy for stopping that access point. A couple of concerns with the language as it's written. One is specifically with the glove box. My concern is really for law enforcement and then for vulnerable populations at traffic stops. If we've codified that firearm storage is responsible in a glove box, the first place many people go during a traffic stop is to go ahead and reach for the glove box. And so I do have some concerns about that increasing escalation of traffic stops, or concerns specifically for both the safety of law enforcement and for vulnerable populations. And then I'm also concerned just with trunks about being secure. Trunks of most vehicles are easily opened once you've breached the car. So just a thought about that. But I wanted to thank the council and specifically Councilman Christensen for your action to address one access point of firearms in the hands of juveniles. And I look forward to continuing to work with the city on policy and education to help keep all in our community safe from gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, Mr. Shope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to take a moment to thank Ms. Killam for her service on the task force and your persistence in helping us make Lincoln safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. And is there anyone else that would like to testify in favor of this ordinance? Okay, is there anyone who would like to testify against this ordinance? Please come forward. And you can be sure and sign in, please.
I'm Jared Yoakum, 6424 South 31st Street. When we talked about this previously, I voiced my opposition to this, and I would wish to reiterate my opposition to this. The normal point, or the points I said last time, still stand. Glove compartments, I actually do agree with the last person. Putting a firearm in your glove compartment, that is the first spot you go to get your license and registration. If you're not safe and you don't tell the officer right away, say, sir, I have a firearm in there, he sees that, he's going to escalate it. So that's one point. Another point I have against the glove compartment, no glove compartment is big enough to house a firearm case, even trucks. A soft-sided pistol case, maybe, but a hard-sided Pelican case that is locked, no glove compartment that I've found can actually hold that, especially in a Prius. Trunks. The trunks of most cars are not big enough to hold a long gun case, especially a Prius. We'll just go back to there. You have to put down the rear seat. That right there nullifies the entirety of the out of sight, out of mind mentality. SUVs, trucks, minivans do not have a storage capacity or luggage area trunk that is not visible from an outside window. So under this ordinance, no SUV, truck, or minivan would be able to carry a long gun. It is not feasible to have a hardened storage container for a rifle or a shotgun securely attached to the vehicle. Once again, like my Pilot, I have to put the rear seat down to even get a long gun case in there. Now I have to permanently secure that to my vehicle. That completely takes out the third row. so I can't carry my children or take my children around. Another phrase, the hardened storage container securely attached to the vehicle. What is hardened? Is a plastic gun case hardened? Does it have to be a hardened plastic case made by Pelican? Does it have to be a steel case that no one can even puncture? That is going to be very cost prohibitive, and I don't even know of anybody that makes a steel gun case that cannot be punctured. While I was thinking about this, UPS carriers, FedEx carriers, they do not know when they are carrying firearms to a FFL dealer, a gun store. The boxes are not labeled firearm. They have to be nondescript. So every time, if they are delivering a gun to an FFL dealer and they have 6 stops to make before that, every time they get out of that vehicle to make a stop to a residential area, they are breaking this ordinance. They are leaving their vehicle unattended and not under control. If an ordinance like this needs to be passed, I think it should be phrased more like, or put the only stipulation on it, the gun case cannot be visible to the casual passerby looking through a window. This is already done with purses and other valuables that you leave in your vehicle. If you go to the pumpkin patch, you don't leave your purse sitting right there on the front seat where everybody can see it. You put it underneath the dash, you throw a blanket over it, you throw a coat over it. Out of sight, out of mind. This would also help protect the UPS and FedEx people. They don't know that they're carrying the firearm. As long as we say that if it's out of sight, out of mind, they're not breaking any laws.
1 more minute.
As it is currently written, the ordinance is impossible to comply with. If we modify it to read out of sight, out of mind, as long as it is not visible to a casual passerby looking through the window, then it is much more easier to comply with. And I might actually support an ordinance like that. Any questions?
Thank you very much for testifying.
Hi, my name is Dave Kendall. I'm from Lincoln. Madam Chair and City Council members, thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm generally opposed to any effort to criminalize the victims of crimes, and that's exactly what this ordinance does. Can anybody on the council name another ordinance that makes victims criminals for not making enough effort to keep themselves from being victims? Can anybody, is any law in the United States say that you're a victim, but now you're a criminal because you did not try hard enough to keep from being a criminal, or a victim, excuse me? I don't think there is such an instance. Reporting a stolen gun out of a car under this ordinance will automatically make you the subject of investigation by the police to determine if you've complied with this ordinance. Is that correct? Will the officer investigate to see whether you'd complied with this ordinance?
Point of order. You can't address anybody other than the council member. We can ask him that question later.
The assumption is that you will be the subject of an investigation by the police for reporting a stolen gun out of your car, even if you had complied with the ordinance, even if they'd snipped the cable or busted into your glove box. All glove boxes now are pretty much just plastic. If you can break into a car, you can certainly break into the glove box. But it just turns the person into a suspect. And so I think what's going to happen is that people are just not going to report them. I mean, if you're afraid of being investigated by the police, if you have a fear of that, you're not going to report the stolen gun. I went to college for way too much of my life and learned a lot, some of it useful, some of it not so. And I've been a manager pretty much my entire working career. One of the lessons I learned in one of the classes that I took was we did a lot of case studies. And one of those case studies, most of those case studies in business were about why businesses went out of business. And one of the ones that really stuck with me was the owner-manager of a company who was having a staff meeting. The company had a bad month. His management staff was telling him why, what had happened. And he blew up at him. He said, don't ever bring me this information again. I don't want to hear this kind of thing again. And guess what? They never did. And he went out of business. And that's exactly what you're doing here. You're punishing the people that bring you bad news. If you don't want people to bring you bad news, punish them for doing it. Make them the subject of an investigation. And, you know, the most vulnerable parts of this community are the ones that are least likely to report these, because they're the ones that are the most suspicious of the police. It's just a matter of fact. If we're really concerned about gun theft from cars, why don't we just increase the penalties for actually doing it? Why don't we make it a felony? Right now, if my firearm's stolen out of my car, even though I've locked the car, if it's not in a safe in the car, I've locked the car, they've busted in the car, they've taken it, they're subject to the same penalty. If that gun is less than $200 in value, they're subject to the same penalty that I would be subject to for having the gun in the car and being the victim of that crime. 6 months in jail. I'm not going to report a stolen gun out of my car if I'm facing 6 months in jail. I'm just not. I mean, I'll take my chances otherwise. You guys can figure out what to do. I can be investigated if it shows up somewhere or whatever. Maybe I lost it, maybe I sold it. But I think you've really headed down the wrong path here when you start criminalizing the victims of a crime. Any questions?
Thank you very much for testifying.
I'm Gary L. Hahn. I live at 6319 Rainier Court, Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm against this. I think what you're doing is actually penalizing those citizens that have come forward and bought or purchased guns and legally purchased those. I think there's a lot out there that you don't know, a lot of firearms are out there that are not reported, and so consequently, these are the people I think that we need to put some penalties against, not those that actually have gone out and followed the law. And of course, if you are stopped by an officer or even at your home, they know the fact that you have a concealed weapon permit, and the first thing they ask is where that weapon is. Are you carrying it or whatever? But, you know, if you put it in a vehicle, I don't know how you're going to secure it in that vehicle. The cases that they provide, I think you could gain entry very quickly to, if you want to, pry them open and that. Out of sight, if you put it in your trunk, my trunk, for example, just flip a button and that seat comes down. You can get in real quick to the car itself. Glove box, there's no locks on the glove box whatsoever. And so where are you going to put this out of sight? And if you put it in the trunk, how are you going to anchor that in the trunk? I'm not a mechanic or anything, never have been, but I can see that there's probably some sheet metal or something under there that you're going to be able to put a bolt in, but that isn't going to have going to take much force really to pry that off if somebody knows what they're doing and breaking in. So I think it's wrong to do that. I like the idea though that if our gun is stolen, that it should be reported, and I would do that as a citizen. But I'm not sure we need to impose a fine on that either. I think most people that have guns legally are going to respect the law because they already have a handgun and they've gone through all the efforts and reported all of the information that's needed. So that's all I have. I'm just not going to reiterate what else was said. I agree with what else was said too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying.
My name is Doyle Hulme, Hulme. I live in Fallbrook at 6505 Saltgrass Road, and I concur with the previous three, so in the interest of being not redundant on all of those, I'll just add a couple points. Number one, I'm concerned about our visitors coming to the community from outside of Lincoln. And particularly, I'm involved with the Lincoln Trap and Skeet program, and we continually promote regional and state and maybe a national competition. And as a result of that, we're going to have potential criminals coming in to the community, and they're going to be stifling their interest in coming to the community. I'm also a lifetime member of NRA, and I was participating in a Refuse to Be a Victim program that I ran across in Phoenix at a church program there that put it together. And it's got a lot of positives in here in terms of what you should and shouldn't be doing. I made some copies of the supplement, which can give you a pretty good idea of what the program's about. But this is put on by the NRA along with several training programs for youth and for those who are interested in becoming competent in terms of, particularly women have shown a sizable interest in developing that deal. I'll lay these over here, and if you want to take a look at them, you certainly may. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. Yes, sir.
Byron Millison, 3146 Apple Street. I'm going to be reiterating a few things that some people have already brought up, but there are a number of issues with the ordinance as written. So not everyone has a glove box which locks. Mine does not even have a release on, or have any sort of locking mechanism whatsoever. Not everyone has the ability to secure a hardened storage container, which, as was brought up, there's no real definition for that yet. But not everyone has the ability to secure one of those to their vehicle, either for financial reasons or just because it's impractical for their vehicle. Such as in my case, I have a pickup, does not have a trunk. So I have no means of securing mine in the trunk. Full disclosure, I did find a way to, because I am a CCW, I did find a way with a friend to mount a container in my vehicle out of sight. Not everyone has a friend that is capable, has the tools and capability to help them with that. Also, if somebody breaks into my vehicle, they're going to be able to break into that. So having that does not preclude somebody from getting access to it by breaking into my vehicle. Just the existence of it does not mean they're not going to get my access to my firearm if I left it in there. And as was brought up already, rifles and shotguns are not practical to be put into a hardened storage container that can be permanently attached to the vehicle, or even temporarily attached to the vehicle in a lot of cases. I want to lay out a possible but very likely scenario. So I am going to the range, and I have a long rifle, and I'm taking it to the range to shoot it at the range. I want to stop at a gas station, or I want to stop at the grocery store and pick up something to eat or something to drink on the way. I would be in violation of the ordinance because I don't have a trunk. I don't have a hardened storage container I could put that into. It would just be, say behind the seat or something of that sort. It would not be according to this ordinance, though, and I would be in violation, and I would become a criminal just for stopping and going to the gas station, going to the grocery store. Or as was brought up, people who do skeet shooting, shotguns. Again, it's very impractical to attach a hardened storage container that you could put your shotgun into, just because of the size of it. I would quote from the very ordinance proposal that I read online. Whereas good public policy supports the storage of firearms to be secured and out of public view when they are left unattended. Out of view means out of sight, behind the seat, under the seat, or in the glove box, whether it locks or not. And I would argue that the vehicle itself being locked is secured. There is no reason to go further and make additional and egregious, I would even say untenable, regulations and ordinances that we law-abiding citizens are required to follow simply because some people feel unsafe around them. That's my opinion, for the whole reason for this. Some people feel unsafe about them. I'm not saying that's fact, I'm just saying that's my opinion. There's also the issue of the fact that the ordinance specifically exempts law enforcement. Why should law enforcement not be held to the same standard that we are? There was an example of, I think it was a couple years ago in Omaha, I believe, a U.S. Marshal whose vehicle was broken into and several firearm and firearm components were taken from his vehicle. If the goal is to prevent people from getting access to firearms, why are certain people excluded from this ordinance? That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier, please.
Greg Lonick, 610 South 30th Street, Lincoln. I'm addressing you today in regards to this ordinance relating to the firearms and unattended motor vehicle proposed by Councilman Christensen. The council member should be commended on recognizing that this is a serious issue, the safety of Lincoln residents. Teenage thieves are an ongoing problem. My neighborhood typically experiences a rash of thefts from autos in every spring and fall. Teenage criminals with stolen weapons is certainly a danger to our fine city. I do want to remind you, though, that I take issue with the proposed ordinance. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of the State of Nebraska in part states that the right to keep and bear arms for the security of defense of self, family, home, and others, and for lawful common defense, hunting, recreational use, and all other lawful purposes, and such rights shall not be denied or infringed by the state or any subdivision thereof. This ordinance places the burden to reduce teen theft on the victims of the crime rather than on the criminals. As such, I see this as an infringement on the constitutional rights of Lincoln residents and visitors. Nowhere in this ordinance does it address the root problem, teenage thieves, nor does it seek to punish such thieves. Instead of it punishes the victims of the crime. Additionally, there are inherent problems with storage requirements. A person without a state of Nebraska concealed carry permit who secures a firearm in the glove box of their vehicle while operating it is in violation of state law in that they are concealing the weapon and could be charged with committing a felony offense. I drive a pickup truck. Currently, when transporting a long gun, I put it in a soft case behind the seat of my truck. I don't believe there is a lockable storage container that would meet the requirements of this ordinance that would fit behind the seat of my truck. I would be in violation of this ordinance if transporting a long gun in the manner I currently do simply by exiting the truck, locking it, and entering a store for a short amount of time, even though the vehicle is secured and the firearm is out of sight. Again, Councilman Christensen is to be commended for recognizing a serious problem in our city and the desire to do something. However, I would like to see the solution directed at the criminals rather than potentially making criminals of law-abiding citizens. I would be curious to know if any of the teens who were apprehended with stolen firearms were sentenced to 6 months in jail or fined more than $500. Perhaps the council should increase the penalty for someone being in possession of a stolen firearm and then insist that the prosecutor's office enforce the law. I also take issue with this ordinance excluding peace officers and members of the military. I can see no valid reason why they should not be held to the same or higher standards as ordinary citizens. I would like to suggest that rather than making criminals of currently law-abiding citizens and visitors to our community, the City Council focus on stopping or more severely punishing the actual criminals. Also, education and outreach to inform firearm owners to encourage safe storage habits would be a better solution than punishing them for being victims of a crime. The ordinance can be strengthened by requiring that vehicles be locked, which would make them secure, and firearms placed out of sight. Additional hard storage containers attached to the vehicle are impractical in some cases, especially for rifles and shotguns, and burdensome in others. Proposed changes to this ordinance ultimately serve to punish the victims of the crime rather than criminals. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Teresa Clark, 7533 Stevens Ridge Road. I agree with everything he said, so put me down as co-author, please. So, I too was on the mayor's task force last year, and I am very concerned for safety. I think it's important that we're here to have the discussion and to shape the message the way it needs to be. We need to continue to advocate, to educate and to inform as we work with our we work with our firearms owners, our children, and we continue to shift the practices. We have a crime issue, so let's address the crime, not create a new criminal. And I think that's what I hear so much from so many of our gun owners. When I teach classes, whether it be concealed carry, refuse to be a victim, private lesson, anything like that, we are talking about safety. Where are you going to put that gun? It's outside of reach, lunge, or grasp, someplace where it can't be accessed by the driver. And how do we secure it? We talk about that during every single class. And so let's look at some different ways that if the issue is crime, then let's address the crime. Let's address and not make someone else a criminal. It's kind of like the pothole discussion. Are we talking about a roundabout or a pothole? So let's figure out where the real issue is. And I was in the military for way too many years, so I apologize for this, but one of the things we used to say in management was, just because someone wets their pants, don't make everyone wear diapers. So I kind of feel like that's where we're at. So thank you. If anybody has any questions or comments, thank you for initiating that, sir. And I think it's an important discussion to have.
Thank you very much for testifying.
I would like to thank Ms. Clark for her service on the task force also. Thank you.
My name is Corey Raymond. My business address is 650 J Street here in Lincoln. I was here earlier listening to the traffic discussion, and I managed to drive to my son's CLC, drop him off at his mom's at East, and get back here, if that's any reflection of the traffic congestion. It wasn't too bad, actually, but I was listening to you on the internet. The 7-minute break saved me so I could get back here in time. One of the greatest seasons is upon us now. Football season just ended, and now we are blessed with hunting season. And some of my fondest memories are my uncle. My dad lost his leg in Vietnam, so my uncle would take me out pheasant hunting because my dad couldn't walk through the draws. And he'd pick me up, and we'd go hunt pheasants, and we'd go hunt quail. And we'd do that for a couple weeks, and then it was deer season. And it was the greatest time. The fall is the greatest time for somebody like me. And I know there's a lot of farm kids that have relocated. You don't have to be a farm kid to enjoy hunting, I know, but that live in Lincoln. And so I was thinking how this would impact myself. And, you know, I have a couple sons that I take hunting now. And it's about to be pheasant season. It's about to be deer season. And when we load the shotguns up, you know, I own a truck. And I always got to stop and get shells. I always got to stop at the gas station because somebody's hungry or something like that. And I lock my car and I run in there. Under this ordinance, I just violated the law. I probably lost my firearms. Now, I was thinking, what's the likelihood of the police just happening to look in my window at that time? Probably pretty small. But there's a lot of people that do not like guns in Lincoln. And there's a lot of people that would be more than willing to call the police because they saw a shotgun in my back seat while I was buying shells at Shields or something like that. I suspect all you would have to do is go to Shields and start looking through windows under this ordinance, and the police could spend their entire afternoon writing tickets and seizing firearms for people that left their shotgun back in the back seat. The car's locked. I don't want to lose my shotgun. That deer rifle cost over $1,000. I do everything I can. But there are times that I leave it locked in my vehicle, and I should be able to do that. I think the way this is written right now, it would harm hunters, and there's a lot of hunters in Lincoln. And you know, when I bought my truck, I did invest in. I bought a thing called a decked system in the back, which is basically a second floor on the bed of my truck, and it's got shelves that slide out. One of the reasons I did that is because I got two sons and I didn't want to leave guns in the truck with them when I do go on these things. And it's great. It locks them away. The problem is it cost me $1,200 to do that. Not everybody's going to be able to afford that, but that's the only way I could do that. And so I would ask you to consider taking off the part about long guns on this, because I think it will hurt many hunters on this. You know, there's many times that I have a shotgun. I'm going to go out after work and go shoot a trap out at Pawnee Lake or meet somebody out there, and I have my truck locked at my business and I try to cover it up, I know I take a risk, but I think if you look at the numbers, I suspect most of the guns taken out of vehicles are handguns. And I certainly understand that, because it's nothing for me to have my handgun and just put it under my seat and I'll forget about that, right? And, you know, I lock my truck, and thankfully, because of LPD's 9 p.m. Lock your car thing, I think, oh, heck, did I get my gun? And I'll go out there and I'll grab it.
One more minute.
You can't do that with a long gun, because it's sitting right there, and it's right there, and you know you got to get that out of there. It's on your mind, and it's not easy to forget. So I'd ask the council to consider limiting this to make this more hunter-friendly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming down to testify.
Hi, I'm Jeff Lukowski from 7100 Adams Street. I'll make it quick to the point. It's not going to happen. We're just not going to do it. I'm not going to run bolts into a $90,000 Escalade to bolt down my gun. You just can't do it. You know, most people that have guns, they have gun sleeves. You get a family of 4 from South Dakota that's going to come down here and trap shoot. They got 4, maybe 5 shotguns that are probably worth about $7,000. They're not going to buy cases and bolt them to their car. It ain't going to happen. I don't know what you're thinking when you're trying to ask us to do this. And as for the fines, I can see an irresponsible gun owner, maybe he should get a ticket. $50, $75, $100. $500 and throw them in jail. That's insane. You know, I don't know what you're thinking. That's all I got.
Thank you very much for testifying. Next testifier.
Yes, hi, Denise Arnold. First, I'd like to say I agree with a lot what everyone has said, and they've been bringing up a lot of the details, so I won't weigh you down with details, except for actually one thing. So apparently, if you don't have a carry and conceal, right, you can still have your gun there, right? However, if you now conceal it, and you're going in somewhere, and then you're coming back out, you had a good time, you had a good dinner, talking to friends, get back in your car, I'm going to drive home right now, right? And next thing you know, a cop pulls you over, and your gun is concealed. Do you have a carry and conceal license? No. Get out of the car. Time to arrest you, yes? So we have a lot of problems with this. They brought up the obvious. What I see here is also a reminder. A lot of you were not here before with the whole housing situation. Gestapo, like, let's get on your door and check out your place. You're basically guilty until I can prove you innocent. Well, I feel like this is kind of like the same thing. Okay, also, these are going to be pushes, and they're going to keep happening, okay? The push is to take your guns. Now remember, in Hitler days, okay, what did he do? Registration. Now we know where all the guns are. Okay, now it's time to take the guns. Now it's time to shuffle you off into the furnace. Okay, there's a reason besides hunting. Me, I don't have a gun, but every time I see the hysteria and all these little inches taken to disarm us, makes me want to buy a whole bunch of guns now. So, I'm not a hunter. I find guns a little scary holding it. I did try a target practice. You should be very educated in using one. But all these ridiculous things, I mean, who is going to get a kickback over here? Does someone know someone in the box industry that already has designed something for the car? Because, seriously, do you have people every day running around and taking guns out of cars? I don't think so. This is the melting pot, the frog in the pot, slowly turning up the heat so you don't notice, inch by inch, taking away our freedoms. Think about it, because things could get a lot worse. And when you put things like this in and restricting our freedoms, you're going to wish you never did. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Seeing none, let's go on to the next item.
That concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session. Ordinance's third reading. We just have one item. Amending Chapter 9.24 of the Lincoln Municipal Code by adding a new section numbered 9.24.103 entitled Destruction of Property, Affirmative Defense, to provide for an affirmative defense for people breaking into unattended motor vehicles in order to rescue children or pets, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Motion by Bowers, second by Christensen.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
No,
Yes.
I'd like Mr. Kirkpatrick to come forward,
Okay.
just for a second.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, thank you very much. We had a public hearing about this, and I asked this question there. I'd just like to ask it again. Does this ordinance inoculate someone against prosecution if they choose to take an action that might save a child or a pet?
It doesn't inoculate them. What it does is it provides a defense. And so it's possible that you may get ticketed because you broke out a window because you thought a pet or a child was in danger. So if that happens and an officer responds, that officer may look at the situation and say, you did the right thing, I would have done the same thing, not write a ticket. That officer could write a ticket because their perception of the situation was different than yours. If that happens and the citation is actually filed and you go to court, then it gives you an opportunity to go to court, explain the situation, and have the judge say, yes, you've got an affirmative defense, you acted appropriately, and so the charge will be dismissed.
Thank you very much. It's an appropriate, I think the ordinance says affirmative defense, correct?
It does, and let me add to that, though, the fact that this affirmative defense is out there and a lot of officers are going to be aware of it may well make them less likely to write the citation in the first place because of the recognition of the affirmative defense.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Resolutions on first reading are items 8A through H. Ordinances on first reading are items 9A and B. Under our pending list, item 10C, we've had a request from the applicant to remove this item from pending to have public hearing and action on October 28th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Christensen, seconded by Washington. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Not a public comment night. Madam Chair, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Second.
There's been a motion by Schob, seconded by Christensen. Please call the roll.
Yes. Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.